your attendance. We do have a pretty hefty agenda, but please understand I'll be watching it closely. We've already taken the interim financial statements off, and we'll take anything else off, so we'll have sufficient time in closed session. But we'll start with Parks and Recreation.
Yes, sir. We have Chad Morris. He is our interim director.
Chad, we're glad to have you here.
And he's going to rock and roll as soon as they bring it up on the screen, and I go help him get it up on the screen. Excuse me. And here's the button.
You gotta do everything around here.
How
are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
I like that. That's a great color.
Thank you.
Go for it, Chad.
All right.
Yeah, glad to have you.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon.
Oh, excuse me. Also, I know everyone already knows this, but Jessica's still out with the baby and will not be in attendance today. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. I'm pleased to present the FY19 CIP for Parks and Recreation. I do have a couple of data points I'd like to share with you that helps reinforce our success and also to describe how our CIP is advancing the city's goals. First of all, we improve connectivity and provide access. 58% of our residents live within a 10-minute walk time to a park. That does exclude the rural south of Virginia Beach. There are currently 297 miles of bikeways, trails, and wide sidewalks. Wayne Wilcox and Parks Recreation provided a briefing a couple weeks ago showing how we are advancing our bikeways and trails network. We also contribute to maintaining a quality of life. The 2017 Virginia Beach Citizen Satisfaction Survey measured 97.1% were satisfied overall with the community's recreation centers, and 92.3% were satisfied with city parks. As far as protecting the environment, currently 3.2 million trees in the city. That covers 38% tree canopy in Virginia Beach. We plan to conduct further study to see how well we've advanced in the recent years, and hopefully we've increased that percentage. Improving community health and wellness. Currently have over 84,000 recreation center memberships at our recreation facilities and over 1.2 million recreation membership card scans during 2017. Over 3.1 million visits have been made to our parks in 2017 as well. We also provide safe community gathering places. Virginia Beach contains 293 park sites, almost 7,100 acres of parks and open space, 7 community recreation centers, a municipal marina, and an athletic park complex. Also, and for increasing sports tourism, the sports tourism related events at our Princess Anne Athletic Complex alone has added additional 20,000 room nights and brought forward 43,000 out-of-town attendees in 2017. A couple of recent accomplishments we have. Tom Nicholas mentioned this one a couple weeks ago in his presentation for building CIP, being the Kempsville Recreation Center. We had great success with that facility. It opened on June 29th, 87,000 square foot. A couple of results after it's been built, I'd like to go over some neat milestones. The first weekend alone, we had over 15,000 visitors to that facility. Since its opening from July to November, over $1 million has been collected in revenue just through that facility alone. And daily membership scans at that facility from that same time period, July to November, were at about 180,000 membership scans. So what an overwhelming success that facility has been for our community. Also, another success I'd like to mention is the Princess Anne Athletic Complex multi-purpose field renovation. This was to convert 4 natural fields to synthetic turf fields and additional lighting. This helps us program longer playability on those fields, longer time, helps us get up and moving after weather conditions, as well as help enhance our sports tourism draw in our market. An additional 239 vehicle parking lot is being designed and planned to be constructed later this summer to help enhance that facility. I've listed here a couple of other recent noteworthy accomplishments. First being city bikeways and trails implementation. We've done a great job expanding shoulders at Western Shore Drive, Buckner Boulevard shared use path, and also we've done a great job with our capital maintenance for our Sportsplex field hockey training facility, our recreation centers, and our parks and special use facilities, such as replacing basketball courts, doing odds and ends things like replacing the Pungo Ferry boat ramp and other miscellaneous items that helps keep our facilities in great condition. A couple of other projects worth mentioning that are in the works. The Lynn Haven Marina bulkhead replacement and facility renovation. We brought this project forward last year as we had a bulkhead failure at that facility. And we're happy to report the designs have been finished. We have funding ready to go and ready to advertise that project very shortly to get that failure corrected, as well as we've conducted a facility assessment there as well to ensure we don't have any other potential signs of failure in the future. And then also our Parks and Recreation Administration Office's relocation. This is very exciting for us as we're able to move into that facility shortly. We have slowly started moving in. Our last move in is this Friday. That puts multiple facilities under one roof. Hopefully we'll gain some synergy and efficiency gained out of that facility.
We got a question. that you
yes,
guys
sir.
can-
On that bulkhead failure, was that on Crab Creek or was that on the other side?
It was on Long Creek, the Long Creek side.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
So for the Parks and Recreation building, we're looking forward to a ribbon cutting here shortly in April, potentially April 27th. So we look forward to that invitation for you all.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
At the end.
What? You go? Okay, buddy.
Moving on to actual CIP projects, funding by type. This is just a quick graphic showing where our real focus is, and that's heavily toward facility repair and renovation. As you can see, FY 18, 19, and in the future 6 years, we're heavily geared toward facility repair and renovation. The little sliver of pie you see in yellow is for new facility. That's for bikeways and trails. And then in red is facility replacement. That's our playground replacement projects. This is another way showing how our CIP is divided up for the year. There's 21 CIP project headings. With that, there's 14 listed here. Those are their active ones that have been requested funding between FY19 and FY24. Most of those headings listed contain sub-projects underneath of them to help get us a wide variety of the projects we need to take care of. Some of those not listed are projects that are, such as Kempsville Recreation Center, that project's pretty much complete and there's no further funding or action requested at that point. So what's upcoming in FY19? First of all is our Bikeways and Trails Plan implementation. This is our CIP that funds our biking infrastructure. Most of those projects selected are from the Bikeways and Trails Plan and the Outdoors Plan. Upcoming projects in FY19 include the Siwat Master Plan, Paths for Violet Bank Drive and Three Oaks Path. Those are both TAP grants. And Hornet Drive Path, which received funding from a FLAP grant.
What's a flap grant?
FLAP grant stands for Federal Lands Access Program. It provides funds for projects on federal lands access transportation facilities that are located on or adjacent to or that provide access to federal lands. Yes, ma'am. 4306 is Open Space Park Infrastructure Development Maintenance. This is formerly known as Open Space Development Maintenance from the Open Space Program. It was recently expanded last year in scope, last year to include signature, metro, and community parks, as well as special use sites. FY19 projects include Red Wing Park renovations, Woodstock Park renovations. That's our partnership in conjunction with HRSD and the wet weather storage tank. We're matching some funds to help improve the park facilities while that park's down for construction for the wet weather tank, as well as their commitment to build a skate park on top of that tank. We're very excited about that project. We also have Great Neck Park gazebo, deck, and rail replacement, and design to get started on the Princess Anne Athletic Complex office trailer, which is just about exceeded its useful life. 4080 is the Sportsplex Field Hockey Training Center. This funds our major capital repairs at that facility, at those two facilities actually. Facilities are currently operated through a management agreement while the city still has obligation of the capital maintenance. FY19 projects include repairs to the Sportsplex grandstand and painting the exposed steel components at that Sportsplex. You'll see shortly we have identified a need for an increase in funding for this CIP heading, and I'll explain that shortly. 4-300 is Community Recreation Center repairs and renovations. This project funds our preventative maintenance at our 7 recreation centers. These facilities are heavily used. These facilities require regular preventative maintenance, as well as capital repairs and renovations to effectively maintain these facilities. Every effort's put in place to bundle related projects or reduce total project costs, and try to use utilization of Energy Star equipment and other sustainable materials that result in reduced maintenance and reduce energy consumption during their life cycle of equipment and materials. Upcoming projects include ongoing circuit and cardio equipment replacements and replacement of the pool ceiling lights at certain facilities. Just as a note, we're also planning to develop a comprehensive modernization strategy for the older facilities. That includes Bayside, Great Neck, Princess Anne, and SeaTac rec centers. The strategy provides everyone, would provide everyone with the needed information how to move forward potentially in the next 5 to 10 years as far as looking at space utilization, building integrity, systems analysis, expansion opportunities, programs, potential costs to do so, and sequencing at these facilities. So strategy would obviously also include public involvement, and it's also a component in our Parks and Recreation strategic plan. 4301 is for Parks and Special Use Facilities. This is another Parks CIP. This funds improvements and renovations to our neighborhood parks, community parks, metro parks, signature and special use facilities. This initiative funds the numerous capital renovations replacements that are required in order for the city to continue to provide quality recreational facilities to all residents of the community. FY19 projects include ADA improvements at Allenton Elementary School athletic field, renovations at Salem Woods Park, Great Neck Park parking lot maintenance, field improvements at Rosemont Forest, signature signage improvements at Bayville, Great Neck, and Red Wing Parks. 4-303 is for greenways, scenic waterways, and natural areas. As you know, Virginia Beach is interconnected with a series of extensive natural linear open spaces that consist of open marshes and wooded swamplands. These greenways also provide significant environmental benefits to the city by providing open space and recreational amenities, and these areas need to be preserved and managed as greenways for the future well-being of the city. The Virginia Beach Waterway Network also provides a unique recreational opportunity for residents to enjoy various bodies of fresh and salt water throughout the city. Many of these water bodies are interconnected and provide a unique habitat for wildlife and marine life. Connectivity to the water has consistently ranked very high with our citizens. FY19 project includes Hutton Circle ADA accessible launch replacement. We do have 4 projects with an increase in project cost above available funding. First one being 4079 is Thalia Creek Greenway Phase 3. This is a project to design and construct 1,200 linear feet of paved trail and raised boardwalk that connects Phase 2. The Phase 2 section is the section behind Midtown Apartments and curls down to Bonnie Road. The Phase 3 section connects from Phase 2 and moves west toward Independence Boulevard. This Phase 3 project is currently under design. However, recently $300,000 was needed to acquire 2 easements for Phase 2 and Phase 4 of the Greenway, and per the development agreement. CIP was used to fund these acquisitions. However, the project funds needed to construct Phase 3 are now short by $300,000. Thalia Creek Greenway Phase 3 is also has partial grants funds tied to that as well. Second increased project cost above available funding is for 4301. That's for Parks, Special Use Facilities, Development, and Renovations. We have a sub-project underneath of that for Mount Trashmore. This is a one-time $250,000 increase, which would provide funding to construct a permanent outdoor stage at Mount Trashmore and to provide a sustainable park venue for this popular signature park and per our Mount Trashmore master plan. Current practices for such a stage currently include setting up a temporary system such as a showmobile or some type of temporary staging, which due to that frequency has significantly enhanced the deterioration of the park site in this area. The stage component is just one portion of renovations we have currently under design at Mount Trashmore. The entire plan we have calls for the replacement of the park office and restrooms, modifications to provide better separation of vehicular and pedestrian movement and connectivity, and design amenities that provide accommodations such as dedicated power pedestals, concrete pads for vendors or for food trucks surrounding the stage area. All that is currently funded. In addition to those improvements, at Mount Trashmore, there are a couple other projects underway to replace the first set of stairs adjacent to the special events area, as well as renovating the old dock over the water and converting it to a usable boardwalk or observation deck. Those projects are also funded and expected to be completed later this summer. Third increase in project cost above available funding is for our 4-500 Parks Playground renovations. This is a $250,000 a year increase. The total increase would provide funding to replace the highest priority backlog of 55 elementary school playgrounds that have exceeded their life cycle. School playground renovations and replacement projects at school sites would be a cooperative 50-50 cost share with the schools division, which is the same approach that we've used successfully for high school tennis courts. Virginia Beach School System is requesting the additional funding as well to help address the need. Elementary school playgrounds, just so you know, are for public use after school hours and are essential in providing access to quality and safe playgrounds. With that, we currently have 173 park playgrounds in our neighborhood park system, with addition to these 55 elementary school playgrounds. Final increase in project costs above available funding is for 4080 Sportsplex Field Hockey Training Center. Based on a facilities condition assessment completed by Public Works Building Maintenance in 2017, a $5.2 million backlog in capital maintenance. Maintenance needs have been identified. The facility was built in 1997. Many of the components of the aging infrastructure have reached their life cycle and need to be repaired or replaced. The additional $500,000 per year increase will fund the capital maintenance needs necessary for continued utilization of the facility and to meet the needs that the city has contractually with Hometown Sports Management. We also have two projects requested above available funding. The first one is for the Owl Creek Marina. This is a project request that would fund the design and infrastructure improvements to renovate the Owl Creek Municipal Boat Ramp and provide a separate ADA accessible canoe kayak launch facility. The water-dependent amenity is a heavily used launch facility providing boat, canoe, kayak, paddleboard access to the Owl Creek watershed. It is also the only public boat launch facility with direct access to the Atlantic Ocean. Approximately 85% of the area is currently unpaved and requires periodic grading and the addition of road-based material to fill the ruts and potholes. During rain events, sediment washed directly into Owl Creek. This project would also improve water quality through the reduction of the sediment runoff from the existing unpaved parking lot. The final project requested above available funding is the Little Island Park parking lot improvements. This requested project would replace the existing asphalt parking lot with porous pavers and construct a new 279 space parking facility with bathhouse. This is per the Little Island Park master plan. This is a heavily used facility providing parking for sandbridge beachgoers and fishing and a fishing pier on the Atlantic Ocean, canoe and kayakers in the back bay, and overnight parking for campers visiting Falls Cape State Park. The existing asphalt parking lot is deteriorating. Due to the environmental sensitivity of that area, the asphalt parking lot would be replaced with modular porous pavers to reduce the runoff of pollutants into Back Bay. A small portion of the parking lot was renovated in 2013 with the same modular porous paver system. So that gives a kind of a quick rundown of where we're headed and what we requested.
We thank you very much. We
Yes,
do have
sir.
some questions, comments. Jim?
Thanks. Can you go back to the issue on the municipal marina, please?
Yes, sir.
And my question, and it's either for you or for Dave, is you recall we met with that group of commercial watermen who use this marina, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done there, and there are working watermen who use this facility. Bathroom, well, the building fell down, I guess, that was there before. And there's some talk of actually privatizing this, or
That's what I'd heard.
yeah. So I need to. Where are we on that? Who's the lead on that? Is it Parks and Rec or?
Right, we put, I put about 250,000 added to that CIP for site development and to take a look at what we might have to rebuild in order to entice private operations to come in there. The conversation we've had is because it's so small, because we don't have a floating dock, because we don't have any restroom facilities or any outbuildings or any there, we have a requirement for 5 public safety slips, and we'll need to build a new public safety building for operations to support the police boats, fire boats, and EMS boats. There is very little profit margin or ability for privates to come in there and do that. We will be moving forward with an analysis. We will be putting a site plan. You know, there's no water, and I mean, there's
So is there running water
electricity.
now? Because that was the issue that the
Yes,
oyster
they
people
fixed
had.
that within 2 days of our meeting that we had with those watermen.
There needs to be running water
Yes, sir.
for them to be able to deal with the oysters to
Yes,
meet
sir.
the state code. Okay.
Yep, yes, sir. We met that. So we are engaged. I've been able to find enough to put into the CIP so that we can do the pre-engineering and the site analysis, and then we'll be back in touch with you as liaison to give you our findings.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions or comments?
I do a couple.
Yes, sir, please.
I hope when we come back at the budget part, for the things that are new starts, the things that were available but unavailable, no funds were available back. We've seen that in a lot of briefings. I hope at the end we can get a 1 to N priority, or N to X, I should say, priority, as you see all those things that are requesting money for which there's no money for in the current budget or the program that you have. Because you see them here, Parks and Recs.
Yes, sir.
Then there'll be some in fire, there'll be some in mental health. But it'd be nice to see from your perspective, looking down the big list, how are they, N to whatever, what's that priority, if I could?
If I might, yes, sir, Mr. Moss. So what you have is you have a director giving you a briefing that establishes the CIP that we gave him at the FY18 approved budget. And he knows what he had programmed for 19 in that budget. He carries that forward in this conversation, and then he puts those new add-ons. I take a look at where our financial status is, and, you know, if we grow the economy, we grab a little pay-go and we can add it in there. I can tell you that we made some improvements to Chad's request, but we can't cover all those by far. And so we will give you that delineation, what were the requested but unfunded, and where we were able to dot some I's and cross some T's, add some money to them, and then you'll see the remaining balance.
All right, thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
I'll go into slide 11. What I'm trying to understand here, generally, look, I understand what the problem we have here, but generally speaking, preventative maintenance is not considered a capital expense. It's usually serving a recurring maintenance expense. We're doing preventative maintenance versus renovation or recapitalization. So in the operating budget, if we fix this issue, because this looks like this may have happened because we weren't doing the preventative maintenance that we should. I was uncertain, but the voiceover seemed to indicate that might be the case. Are we addressing preventative maintenance in the operating budget? Because we certainly wouldn't want to be using borrowed money for preventative maintenance. I'm just trying to understand the distinction between a capital expense and when preventative maintenance is not a capital expense.
We will not use long-term debt for anything that won't go 20 years. Most of this is pay-go. We keep it in a CIP category, but it's a cash payment associated with an annual appropriation.
The reason why I mention it, because maybe we need to make it and call it just preventative maintenance, because when you go back and look at number 17 at the Sportsplex and field hockey, it would be it'd be somewhat speculation, but an informed judgment that much of what we see there is due to not doing scheduled, on-time, preventative maintenance. Is that a correct conclusion?
I totally agree with you, but let me remind the council, we are coming out of a recession. There were some bill payers and some of these things were delayed. I can tell you that this was a focus area in the CIP review and budget prep, and we have a long-term funding stream put into place, increasing the amount to help the Sportsplex.
And Mr. Mayor, the reason why I'm mentioning it, because if you can't maintain what you have, you shouldn't probably be building a lot of new stuff. And we did build new stuff during that time frame. So I hope that maybe during this budget presentation we're going to do, that we can get a better handle on really what is the backlog and preventative maintenance that's going to generate capital expenses, which we would like to not to have. But I don't have to answer today, but you got my concern. And one last question, if I could. This is on number 14, page 14, the Thalia Creek. I'm just trying to make sure, does the development agreement that we have actually obligate us to expend this, to meet this requirement?
Yes.
Okay, now my question is, how did we make an agreement and a development agreement for which no appropriation had yet been made, but obligates us to spend money. How'd that happen?
We have a Thalia Creek CIP. We knew we would have to add 300,000 to pay the right-of-way associated with completing the project. The project, Chad's framing of it was, we had a project, and, oh, by the way, you added 300 to me, Mr. Manager, for acquisition, so I don't have enough to do my project. His perception would be right. The priority of the current funding would be, I gotta pay for the site acquisition before I move to construction. I would pay for utilities, and I would pay for design, I would pay for permits, I would pay for acquisition. So because I tapped into that CIP that was there for acquisition, I have to replace that which he needs for construction, and I've made that adjustment in the 19 budget so it can move forward.
So as of this date, the money hasn't been moved, so the agreement, so we aren't currently obligated and now to do all that, correct?
Isn't there a contract of some type, or am I mistaken?
This is what I'm asking. This is an important question. You know,
I think we can go back, and I think that I believe I can find
do
where
it
we
here.
reference the CIP, that we would take the money from the current CIP that was appropriated and use those funds, and I would be surprised we do not have the word acquisition in the CIP, because we knew Thalia had that problem all along.
my
Yes, sir.
concern is, and maybe that paperwork will show it is.
Yes, sir.
Did we, not saying that's purposeful but an unintended, we made an agreement, and at the time we made the agreement, there was insufficient funds that had been appropriated to execute the agreement that we made. That's my concern, and we'll find that out with the paperwork. That's
Okay.
my
We have
last
some
question.
other questions. Barbara Hill, anything, Shannon?
Yeah, I'm sorry I was late and I missed your presentation, most of it. On the last slide, dealing with the Little Island parking lot improvements, there was a piece of legislation for a land swap for the Coast Guard station and some property, which I just don't remember our talking about. Is that any part of this, or is that going to cause us to need to spend any money, or are we, what's going to happen before we execute anything with that legislation?
Yeah, you're correct. There is 5.7 acres of property that's owned by the state that we do not own. It's the lifeguard station. The buildings we own, but the property underneath of that we do not own. Delegate Knight has proposed legislation to have the state negotiate with us for a potential land swap. We're trying not to do things in a where it's a dollar cost to the city. We're investigating that, moving that forward. We plan to move that forward here in the upcoming months to see where that lies. We're trying to get that property obviously back to the city so that we can move forward. In order for us to do certain improvements on the parking lot, the area that's underlined by the state, we cannot move forward to do those construction efforts until we physically own the property.
I don't think that had ever been a discussion by the city council, and swapping this other land, I'm not too enthused about, so I'm assuming before that thing all goes, because it's gone pretty far, we really need to talk about what we're going to be giving up.
Yes.
And, we've gotten along since 1925 or whatnot with the property under that Coast Guard station belonging to the state, and I'm not so sure we need to do that now, but we can talk about that another time. But at this point, you don't have anything in this CIP that is a result of that funding or that
Correct.
project?
No.
Correct.
Okay.
Shannon?
Not discounting any projects in the presentation, as I think all of them make us a world-class city for our residents and our visitors alike. However, I do want to just throw this out there as an advocate for the Sportsplex, in that I hope that it moves to the front of the pack or at the top of the pack somewhere in regards to this unmet funding getting funded, as it's been turned around, as we all know, since Hometown Sports Management has taken it over. We get revenue from the taxes generated there. It's full every other day with kids running around everywhere, and it's a face to those that are visiting our city, and it looks pretty bad right now. So I really hope that we keep that in the back of our minds, the 11 of us that are voting on this budget, to make sure that we have that somewhere at the top of the funding needs. Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions or comments? Yes, sir.
I'm curious. I got an email about the painting of the steps at Mount Trashmore. Apparently there's a contest going on or something about it.
I'll jump on it.
Okay, can you tell me what's going on?
Cultural Arts has, and it's really not a painting. The steps, this is a riser and that's a step. So what they're doing is they had a contest with laying out a rectangular art, and what they'll do is they'll translate it into strips of plastic type material, and it'll be mounted on the risers, so as you look at it, it looks like a picture, but when you step on it, the concrete firms so runners won't slip, but they'll be on the regular surface that it is. They won't be permanently attached. The one artist actually pulled out, Vice Mayor, because their artists are sensitive and they wanted their stuff like permanent. But what'll happen is, when you heard Chad brief that we're going to replace those stairs, we'll pull those back off, replace those stairs, and if the public still likes it, we'll be able to apply it back on. So it's a unique way. As you look up the stairs, you'll see the art on the risers, but when you actually go up it, you won't. You'll have the non-skid stairs that we currently have.
Not permanent.
Check.
And that's also the set of stairs that we are not replacing. We're replacing the ones by the special events area. This is the artwork being placed on this. These set of stairs are over by the Kids Cove side, and those aren't planned to be replaced probably for another 2 to 3 years. We're going to hit all three set in a phase.
Very small, but I got an email about it, and
And just for the council's knowledge, you know, we're using this new social media survey tool for various things. We had over almost 7,300 citizens vote in support of one of those three requests. The largest by far citizen engagement with regards to those stairs. Pretty interesting.
Very good. Anything else? We'll move on to information technology.
Sir, Kevin Fairley is going to present for the IT department. Peter Wallace, the director, is coming in, or is Peter going to do it? Kevin, you're doing it? Yes, sir. Okay.
Kevin, we're glad to have you. Peter, glad to have you.
Thank you very much. The CIPs for information technology, we'll start with what's currently existing in the program. There are 22 projects in the current portfolio with FY19 funding programmed at about $9.5 million for those existing 22 projects. Here's our project list. I've got an asterisk by a couple of those essentially appropriated to date. The reason those two projects show a 0 is they were ongoing project activities. They've hit their 10-year mark, so they get a new assignment number program for those. So there's no appropriation to date for those, but we will certainly utilize the existing funds and the other project numbers until those are exhausted, and then new appropriations will show in future years. Second set, we did have one listed there. That one is the 3.69, the customer relationship management software. That was previously approved in a FY17 budget year, but the funds were not slated to start until 19, so that's why that one shows no appropriation to date for that one. The last couple are in a similar situation: fire asset management and police special investigations video storage. Those were actually approved in the FY18 budget process. The funds will become available in FY19. For fire asset management, it's $567,000. And for police special investigation video storage, the funding is going to be available at $975,000. Before we go into the new requests for FY19 and beyond, we do want to talk about some of the progress that has been made for projects that were funded through the CIP process. Next Generation Network project, that is slated to be completed in this fiscal year. Currently 58 of the 60 locations have been connected. There is one left for Parks and Rec, and then the last facility that will be connected is the Housing Resource Center. That's currently under construction, and that's slated to open mid-2018, and that'll be the last facility. And once that one's done, all of those facilities will be connected to the Next Generation Network. Certainly that will give those facilities all connected much faster bandwidth, connectivity, ability to take full advantage of their applications and IT services that are available to them through that network. I'd also like to mention that this particular project was also instrumental in attracting the subsea cables to Virginia Beach and providing some connectivity, bringing also those associated data centers, as well as a company looking to offer Wi-Fi activity in the city. StormSense, this is essentially the flood sensor project. The 10 pilot sensors have been installed and are actively collecting data in the city. Under the pilot project, we're also fine-tuning those devices. Essentially, they are powered via solar, and the sensors are ultrasonic, and then they connect back to the city via a cellular broadband network to deliver that data back to the city. The data from the pilot is going to be analyzed by the Virginia Institute of Marine Science, and they're actually looking at that data, and from that data they're going to develop the regional storm surge predictive model for those storm sensors. We also have enough funds in this project moving forward to add up to, depending on the expense and the location of the devices, up to a possible total of 30 sensors throughout the city. And we're also using the pilot to help us determine the placement of those sensors throughout the city. Integrated public safety, this project is certainly underway. We were able to go live with the computer-aided dispatch in February of 2018. They're currently working those activities with the agencies for that CAD implementation. Next up will be the fire records management, and from there they'll move forward with the police records management. E-ticketing, advanced analytics will follow. Digital Cities Award. This is the second year in a row that the City of Virginia Beach was recognized as the #1 digital city in the categories of city of our size. Things that certainly played into us being selected for the second year in a row were the digital city and open data activities that we have going on in the city, mobility being deployed for our user agencies, certainly efficient and resilient use of innovation and best practice in the IT world, and this is the first time in many, many years that a locality has won 2 consecutive years. We'll turn focus now on the new requested CIPs. There are 10 in the portfolio. The implementation costs of those 10 CIPs, if they were to be funded, would be about $19.5 million. Each one of these requests were analyzed by an IT business analyst, and we have an associated business case with that document that provides the full detail of the request and how the estimates were arrived at for these new requests. These are the additional requests. They total about $19.6 million. Just to run through a few of these. Essentially, what is programmed and available funding is about $11.8 million annually throughout the program through year 24. These 19 do not currently have funding associated with them. I'll go a little bit deeper dive on these. We did have 2 previous CIPs that were approved in a previous budget year that are asking for additional funds. 21st Century Enterprise Resource Planning and Enterprise Scheduling and Timekeeping. I'll talk a little bit more about those as we work our way through the presentation. One of the first ones on the list again, this is Enterprise Resource Planning, or ERP. This includes the financials and human capital management activities for the city. The current system is about 19 years old, and we need to get this replaced and updated. Right now, the project was started with some additional funding. That funding was used to bring GFOA on board to do some look at our business practices and look at those and make recommendations for us. We're ready to move this project forward, so additional funds were requested to move forward. This will handle general ledger, invoices, vendor portal, purchasing, budget forecasting, e-procurement, mobility and self-service, and also the human capital management, which is the HR side of that activity. The current system supports about $1.3 billion in financial transactions annually. It also provides payroll and benefit support for 7,200 employees across the city and $400 million in annual procurement transactions. Real estate software modernization. This is the system that is used to collect the real estate tax revenues for the city. The current system is outdated. It was last updated in 2009. The system essentially would allow for upgrades to give a single sign-on for users to be able to get into the system. It would have integrated records management. It would allow us to be able to update the fields with remote access, give us new property assessment tools, and certainly streamline the processes used by those agencies. The software supports the city's real estate tax revenue and is prevalently used by our real estate assessor, city treasurer, and the commissioner of the revenue. Emergency management system. This is the tool that's used for situational awareness in emergencies. We also use it for natural disasters like hurricane activities, or to help man for large-scale events like the marathons that are held in the city. So this tool is used throughout the year. It supports the critical function of situational awareness for the Emergency Operations Center. Two main reasons that we need to look to replace this system. It doesn't integrate very well with the other tools that are used by the agencies, things like the VB alert system, potential use to integrate with a customer relationship management system, ArcGIS for mapping, Crisis Track for identifying issues across the city in terms of an emergency. But they, again, need this tool to increase their situational awareness and speed up the reporting that's used for the reimbursement activity associated with emergency management. Strategic enhancement of city facilities. This is to provide a tool for facilities management and public works. They essentially manage over 1,200 city facilities. They have an annual budget for maintenance of about $12.5 million for that annual maintenance, and they need a tool or system that will track in an automated way their facilities management to help them make better decisions about what facilities need to be addressed in what order by the city. It'll give them the ability to track facility condition, backlog of maintenance and repair items. They can look at their annual maintenance funding and apply them to their priority work. The CIP itself would include the solution itself. It would give them mobile hardware to be able to update their data in the field when they're out at the facilities doing their inspections. And it would certainly give them a better method for facility inventory and that data collection, again, on condition and needs across the city facility set. Enterprise timekeeping and scheduling. This is one of the projects that did request some additional funding. It was previously approved at $1.8 million. There is an additional request. This essentially would be used for scheduling across the organization to be able to schedule folks to either potentially man facilities, if folks work different shifts, nights, weekends, special circumstances that they would have. This particular project is targeted for a phased implementation, so it would target non-public safety agencies to get their software and configurations first, and then if that works for the non-public safety agencies, the potential to look at the public safety agencies to utilize this system in the future. 911 call taker and dispatch stations. There are 7 stations for 911 that are not fully outfitted with the hardware, software, licensing, and equipment they need to be fully manned stations. These stations were essentially built over time with existing and available funding for those stations. What they're asking is to go ahead and build out the rest of the available stations. This gives us the ability to ramp up when they have large-scale emergency situations, that they can bring in additional staff members and have the equipment and the positions for them to be able to use. Also, when we have partner agencies in the 911 center, like maybe fire or EMS, when they go up there, what they have to do currently today is potentially sit over the shoulder of one of the 911 call takers or supervisors to interact and engage. And if we had additional stations, then they could have their own workstation to work from to make recommendations and to help with the activities for that particular emergency. Police radio encryption. This was brought forward obviously by the police department. Essentially what happens with the radio system, there are now applications out in the field that are available for your cell phones or your computers that actually can track radio activity for the public safety agencies. So that essentially means when they're on the radio conducting their activities, there are folks in the community can listen to that communication, and then if the wrong people happen to be listening to that communication, then they'll know where the police may be coming from, what their tactics may be, how they are intending to approach the facility to try to gain access to that. SID did find that there were a couple of times last year in particular where drug traffickers were using scanners to monitor the police communications prior to bringing drugs into the city. There was also a situation that happened in a local community college here in Virginia Beach where there was an assault underway, and the person that was committing that assault actually had the phone app on their phone and were listening to the response, and they used that app to flee the scene. They were apprehended after they left the scene, but that again gives you an example of the power of the non-encrypted signal and what that can do to impede the work of the public safety agencies. Electronic content records management. The city has a records management agency in the libraries that helps with the records management policies and the records retention to match the state of Virginia requirements. The current system is primarily paper-based and manually operated, where you can reach out to records management and tell them what box you want brought back from the storage facility, and then they'll put that box in a vehicle and drive it out to you, to your agency, and check it in and out to you. This request is to try to move away from a paper-based system and standardize on an enterprise class content records management system that would have automated tools for requesting and receiving the documentation that you need to review. It would also have the ability through automated workflows to help manage the life cycle of that data. So for example, if it's on a 3-year retention schedule, it can warn you and tell you what documents are ready for disposal, 5-year schedule, and then the records manager can go in, file the appropriate paperwork, and then we could actually dispose of those electronic records, certainly in a more efficient manner than we can dispose of the physical paper records in shelves and in boxes. Accela Sustainment. This is a recognition that the Accela application that's being used by agencies like housing and permits and inspections and parks and rec and other areas, that this does need to be treated as an enterprise class application. We did put this request together with 3 potential phases for this activity. What we want to do is move off of the on-premise hardware and software and actually move this to a cloud implementation. That will make it easier to keep up with future upgrades and changes of the software activity. It would move that burden over to the vendor for keeping the software upgraded, relieve our requirements to maintain the hardware on site and go through a life cycle refresh on that activity. There are also additional modules and capabilities that Accela has that we are not currently taking advantage of today. Currently today in the system, we use it for land management. We're using it for a GIS module and Accela Citizen Access licensing and maintenance. So the goal would be to move those to the cloud. We're also looking to add some additional tools. One of those that may be of interest to the council is the legislative management tool that's available in Accela. That would allow both the planning department and the city clerk's office to build their agendas in the system. It also automates part of that process. So for example, if something has been on the planning meeting agenda and it's ready to come to the council agenda, they can promote that agenda item from the planning meeting directly into the council agenda activity. It also has the ability to index the videos that would be produced as part of the system. So it would tie the agenda item to the agenda to the video so the citizens can have direct access to the different markings of the agenda and only watch the piece of the meeting that they need to see. It also gives us the ability to fund and sustain this tool set over time for the organizations that use Accela. Update library meeting spaces. This came in. The libraries essentially have about 42 spaces that are currently used throughout the library system in the branch libraries for meetings, children's programming, studying, entertainment, and then the computer learning labs that they have on site. This request would provide updates to the technology and the AV systems and solutions that are deployed in the libraries. Some of the technology is original that was put into the library, or they have been changed out in an ad hoc manner when a piece of equipment has outlived its useful life or failed. So there's really nothing that they have in their program today that allows them to replace that hardware, build some standards across all the facilities, and then be able to sustain that hardware. They've also asked for this funding at this particular time because they're already doing some building renovations coming up, and that CIP for the building renovations, the 3.071, has the funds to renovate the buildings, but it did not have the funding to upgrade their AV and their technology solutions that are used in those spaces. Telepresence and online collaboration. This is requested by the fire department with EMS. This would enable 62 facilities within those either fire stations or EMS facilities to allow them to use technology to do training and to speak and communicate with each other across the IT network. Today, for their training, they get in the vehicle, they drive out to the fire training center for a lot of their training. When that happens, they have to backfill that fireman at that station to make sure that they're sufficiently staffed in case a call comes in. That can result in overtime for the firefighters and the fire department to have to bear the overtime to backfill those staff members. What they've asked for is hardware that we have deployed elsewhere in the city. We've done a demo and pilot of this in the STIR lab, and it's based on Cisco technology with WebEx used for communications and training activities. So you can actually take the training from the fire station without having to relocate. It would eliminate the ability to have to backfill because that fireman is where he's on site and can be dispatched as needed. The training can also be recorded so they could watch it later on if they had to interrupt their training. So again, this would use known technology, 62 facilities, and again, get some standards in place across all the fire and EMS facilities that have the need. Another public safety, first responders traffic signal preemption. This is to change the lights when the public safety agency vehicles drive up to the intersections. Right now, less than half of the intersections currently have this technology in place. They're asking for additional funds to be able to increase the number. Essentially, the couple stats they used when they made their request, 70% of all on-duty injuries to EMS responders occur from vehicle collisions while responding to calls or transporting patients to hospitals. So certainly this is not available and capable at all of the facilities that we have in the city today. It would also set the stage for putting in some new hybrid technology at these locations. Currently, what has to happen at the intersections, they have to have the technology placed at every single spot of the intersection. So if it's a four-way intersection, you would need four-way delivery. Some of the new technologies don't require that, so we could see a cost decrease for the implementations as they were laid out. The pictures, you can see that they work with some cameras and sensors to tell, and then when the vehicles are coming down the street, they can trigger that sensor and let them know they're coming. The lights would turn green along their path and let them traverse through that intersection without having to navigate the traffic that they do today. And that was the last project that we had. Obviously, these fit with the master technology plan. That was part of the criteria we used for those. And that's the...
Well, Kevin, thank you. We got some questions. Jim Wood.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, going back to the traffic signal preemption, there's been some issues with that with respect to, and probably it's not your department, but I think before we expand this, we need to make sure that within Public Works traffic that the things work well, because when these signals get preempted, typically in front of like a busy station like Station 15 Thalia or down at the ocean front, the other signals tend to not reset in a timely manner, and then people complain because they'll sit through.
You mean like First Colonial in Alaska?
Yeah, and they'll sit through.
I've been there many a time.
4 or 5 light cycles, and so I think that probably before we roll out more, we need to fix what we have, and that's not necessarily your department, but that's definitely Public Works needs to look at that.
Other questions? Yes, sir.
On the police radio encryption, I know a little bit about encryption, just a little bit, but there's a lot of public domain software, because it's just algorithms, and once you set your piece, the encryption is just as if you made it yourself. So I'd like to see the business case. I think you did a business case analysis, but did we really look at public domain encryption? And is that going to be double encryption at both ends? Because single encryption really isn't all that secure in today's environment.
Pretty sure it is. But we'll get you an answer and we'll give you the business case.
When we talked about the payroll system, I can remember that conversation some time back, and all the things, and I'd like to have the brief that Patty gave at that time, if you could dig that up out of archives and compare that. I'd like to see what the business analysis of this is, because it seems to me like some of the things we were told were going to happen with that are now not happening, and now we're paying for it again. I'm just trying to understand what we were told we were going to get when we put up that money versus what we're getting with this new money, just to evaluate how, and the importance of need, where does it stack up?
We'll decipher that.
I would appreciate that. And this issue of the real estate software modernization, I understand what you're trying to accomplish. I'm just who's done the vulnerability assessment? You know, is that an old software like you can have out there that still works, but it's just the hardware that doesn't work? Or is it really that the software is truly vulnerable, or is it just not as robust? Because if this is true, the statement they said could fail and all this stuff would happen, then the probability of failure is very, very important to understand, because that's not a big part of our revenue. Like 32% of our money comes from that. So if truly that risk factor is that high, then clearly there probably is other stuff that's being funded that doesn't bring in revenue that would be a lower priority. And that was, I know sometimes people make statements and they don't really mean what they say, but if that really is true and the vulnerability of that is high, then that definitely needs to be high on our list of making sure it doesn't fail.
Yes, sir. Any other questions or comments? Yes, sir, Ben.
Make a comment. I'd just like to commend Peter Wallace and Daryl Riddick and the entire IT staff. They have done an incredible job of elevating our status nationally as one of the most tech-savvy cities in the United States. And I thank you guys very much, and they've done a lot of work with economic development in terms of helping us attract these data center operations and the subsea cables. So we've got a good team here.
Great. Any other questions or comments?
Thank you.
Thank you all very much for coming over.
Kevin.
We
Thanks,
do
Steve.
appreciate it.
Moving on, Peter Pomerek's coming in for Public Utilities and going to be providing our two enterprise funds of water and sewer. An exciting brief, I'm sure you all are. If Peter, there you are, Peter. Thank you.
Peter, we're glad to have you.
Rock and roll. And Bob Montague, Director of Public Utilities.
And Bob, we're glad to have you too.
Steve Motley, the Public Utilities Engineer.
Mayor, members of council, happy first day of spring. Thanks for having. I'll go over the water and sewer CIP program that we administer in public utilities. And do I have a clicker or?
It's right there. You plugged in, Dave?
And what I'm going to do, as usual, along the way, I'm going to show a couple of our accomplishments from the last year. And starting on this slide, this picture shows something that you will not see again because we will bury it. That's the Kempsville sewer pump station that's still under construction. And this picture was taken last summer when we did the third wall lift for the underground structure. And if you go by there now, you see the superstructure on the roof is all finished, and we'll complete this pump station probably this summer. It'll serve about 1,700 homes and numerous businesses and apartment complexes, and it replaces an older pump station that was under capacity. That was
Peter, how deep is that?
That hole was probably 30 feet deep. It was the deepest point in the city at one point. All right, so just a couple of statistics that I want to bring up first. Again, we administer the water and sewer utility, and that requires quite a bit of infrastructure. I just listed it here. Over 400 sewer pump stations, thousands of miles of sewer and water mains, 10,000s of sewer manholes, 8 potable water pump stations, 2 raw water pump stations, storage tanks. There's also thousands of hydrants and valves, too numerous to list. As a reminder, we are an enterprise fund and solely funded for our water and sewer rates that we charge to our customers. And this year, our CIP program is approximately $33 million. And I'll bring up a couple of details after I show you a couple of our main program drivers. And they're not necessarily mutually exclusive. There's some overlap. Most of our capital improvements that we perform on the water and sewer system are required to address aging infrastructure, by which I mean timely replacement or rehabilitation of our water and sewer facilities before the severity and frequency of failures becomes unacceptable. Secondly, as you will probably remember from prior years, the Regional Sewer Consent Order is a major program driver. It obligates us to continuously evaluate our sewer system performance, assess the system's condition, ensure sufficient capacity for wet weather flows, and make timely repairs. Then there are the third bullets. These are other regulatory compliance issues. Remember, we have the water system, which has to be in compliance with the Safe Drinking Water Act, as well as other regulations, and I'll mention something along the way later. Fourth, we collaborate intensely with Public Works on stormwater and roadway projects. So sometimes we advance projects that would otherwise have waited a year or two or even longer to take advantage of the road being torn up anyway. So I have a couple of examples of that too a little later. 51% type projects. They used to be a more important driver of our CIP. These were projects where the utility extended sewer and water services into residential neighborhoods that were on septic systems and on well water. And over the past 30 years, the low-hanging fruit have all been picked. There are only high-hanging fruit left. And we recently completed one project on Green Hill Road that eliminated 11 septic systems and a private pump station. And then the last item on here, capacity enhancements. This is anything that relates to the growth of the city, where we need to install, say, a new water storage tank and so on. All right, our 6-year program looks like this currently. Each row is 1 year, and then you have it broken down by water, sewer, and the total. So in the bottom right corner, you see our 6-year program is right now $230 million. You can tell it's about 2/3 goes to sewer, 1/3 goes to the water utility. So if you take these 6-year numbers and if you categorize all our different CIP projects by our major categories that I showed earlier, you can see that on the sewer side, about 85% of the requested funding over the next 6 years would go to aging infrastructure projects, and really the remainder in about equal parts to all the other categories. Now remember, the smaller amount of funding goes to the water CIP, and you also see that there's still a majority of the funding is for aging infrastructure projects, but another large fraction we use to work on sewer and water infrastructure betterments while there are roadway and stormwater projects underway. Aging infrastructure obviously is quite important to us, and I always update this slide every year to show the age of our infrastructure. The top pie chart shows the age of our sewer mains, and each of these pie pieces is essentially a cohort of pipes. So the on the sewer mains, at the top, you can see that the small pie piece that is in blue. These are all the pipes constructed prior to 1970, and then the green is what was constructed in the 1970s, and so on and so forth. So if you go all through the 1980s, you can tell, well, about 2/3, more than that, of our sewer infrastructure was constructed more than 25 years ago. And then a similar picture emerges for water mains. You can tell that we have more old stuff on the water side. And the simple explanation for that is, of course, that the water infrastructure tends to last a tad longer than the sewer infrastructure. So our goal is, in the long run, to shrink this blue pie and get the others larger. If we don't do this, we run into predictable issues that include water main leaks, breaks, sewer stoppages and overflows, equipment malfunctions, etc. And all of those issues will ultimately result in disruption of services that are essential to our citizens and can impact public health and our environment. So we need to address this, and I'm showing you now the top 12 CIP requests for the next fiscal year. And just to keep the list short, I kept it to 12, and that covers about 80% of all our requests for fiscal 19. And I have a slide for each one of them this year. So the largest request for new appropriation for fiscal 19 is for 6058 Royal Palm Arch. The funding request is for a multi-year project to rehabilitate the public sewer mains in the Royal Palm Arch service area, which is located north of Virginia Beach Boulevard and west of Little Neck Road. The sewer system in that area was constructed in the 60s. It was owned and operated by a privately owned utility at the time. And the city took over or bought out that utility in the 1980s. And the system is very leaky, very prone to inflow and infiltration, and it's time for us to replace it. The project is currently under design, and then we hope to start it next year. Next one is 5030 Shore Drive, Waterline Improvements Phase 3. The project will replace the existing 10-inch and 16-inch cast iron pipes along Shore Drive from Vista Circle, which is right about where the Lesnar Bridge ends, all the way eastward to Croy Drive, which is at North Great Neck Road. This project will be completed in conjunction with the roadway project 2117, which is, you probably hear more about that today later. And the project, again, is also under design, and construction is anticipated to begin next year. 6041, Pump Station Modifications, Phase 5. So this is an ongoing program that we use to fund replacement, rehabilitation, and modification of sewer pump stations. And I show you a different picture here than what you would usually see when you think of a pump station. So this is a top-down view of a newly rehabilitated wet well at pump station 567. I think that's off of Salem Road. So when we rehabilitate a wet well, we go in and you know, first of all clean it, and we repair all the concrete. It gets resealed and repainted. The piping gets replaced. This particular pump station has submersible pumps, so they get replaced along with the ladders and all the platforms. And we have to do that because of the corrosive nature of the sewage that is stored in there. And the great thing is, if the structural integrity is still given of this concrete wet well and we don't have any capacity issues, rehabilitating this wet well can save us a lot of money because it will extend the lifetime of the pump station. So under this CIP program, last year we replaced 5 sewer pump stations. We have rehabilitated 10. And for the current calendar year, we have planned for the replacement of 8 sewer pump stations and 20 rehabilitations. In addition, we will make electrical safety improvements at another 28 stations. And remember, we have over 400. 6552 Sanitary Sewer Revitalization Program. So this program corrects defects in the wastewater collection system, and repairs are typically performed to address severe structural and operational defects that require prompt corrective action to minimize the risk of system failure, or to address critical defects that pose a threat to the environment or a threat to public health and safety. So we use a variety of techniques to do that. We might simply replace the pipe or make spot repairs or line the pipe. Since the inception of that program in 2010, we have expended over $20 million addressing hundreds of critical defects like these cave-ins shown on these pictures. 5601, 6601. So this is another coordination project with Public Works. We're requesting $2.2 million to abandon old water mains, install new hydrants and additional service lines, and replace the gravity sewer collection system in coordination with this roadway project. 5023, that's an important one to us. Here we're requesting funding for the demolition of the existing Great Neck tank, which is right next to John B. Dye Elementary School, as well as for the design and construction of a new water tank. We've done the detailed condition assessment in 2015 and several visual re-inspections, and found that the interior of the tank is in poor condition, as is evident on this picture here. And more importantly, several hydraulic analyses have concluded that that tank is simply not tall enough and not large enough. So we considered for a while abandoning, getting rid of the tank in that area completely, but our studies have found that we should have a tank in that area, and it should be slightly larger than what we have there now, like similar to the Nimmo tank that's fairly new. So we will start design of this tank this year and anticipate construction in 2020. 6110, this is the Sanitary Sewer Regulatory Compliance Program that involves field investigations and engineering studies and various other services aimed at reducing the number of sanitary sewer overflows from the wastewater collection system. So it's a CIP program, again, that is mainly studies, and you can see here, for example, we do a lot of CCTV work in the sewer system. In fiscal 17, under this program, we did about 90,000 feet of sewer pipe. We performed smoke testing on 50,000 feet of pipe, inspected over 600 sewer manholes, and many other activities. And that does not include the activities that we do in-house with our O&M staff. 5010, Lake Gaston. The Lake Gaston project is starting to show its age. So we have a dedicated CIP program exclusively for the Lake Gaston project. So last year's appropriations we used to fund the design and construction of a new subaqueous crossing of the Meherrin River. This is under design, as well as the replacement of the HVAC system at the sewer pump at the Lake Gaston pump station, and that is under construction currently. We also overhauled valves, which you can see here in the picture. This is one of the 30-inch pressure sustaining valves on the pipeline, and that needed to be rebuilt last year. We also replaced various flow meters and funded some pipeline condition assessments. So this year we're requesting additional funding to overhaul our pumps, to do more security enhancements, and to repaint other pipeline crossings, the ones at Black Creek and Blackwater River. All right, almost done, almost done. I got 5207 Laskin Road, Water Sewer Improvements Phase 1. Again, another coordination project with Public Works, a VDOT-funded road project to replace, to work on the road and replace the bridge, as far as I know. And we will need additional funding to do some additional water and sewer betterments. And construction is anticipated to begin later this year. And I put a little older picture in here. This is the bridge over Lincoln Bay Crossing, or what used to be called Great Neck Creek. And you can see in this picture still the old wooden pile bends. And we used to have a 36-inch main on there that was built in 1977. And then on the bridge itself was another 12-inch cast iron main from 1968. And in anticipation of this road project several years ago, we went ahead and undergrounded all our pipelines. So there's two polyethylene mains, 30-inch in diameter, under the creek now. And we're going to follow up now with the remainder of the work as the road project progresses. Those wooden pile bends have also been removed in 2015, by the way. 5033 Water Transmission System Upgrade Program provides funding for various water transmission and storage tank, design and construction projects. And just to show you one important example here, so this picture shows our operations staff this past January fixing a water main break on Virginia Beach Boulevard. And this affected pipe here is a 16-inch cast iron pipe that was put in place in 1924. So we're now in the planning phase of replacing this old pipe that extends from Newtown Road all the way to, I believe, Great Neck Road.
Wow, we're lucky nothing said.
And it's paralleled by another 20-inch main that's from 1944. So that's not a minor undertaking that we're planning here. So we'll be funding some of this work out of this project. 5251 6552, again, water and sewer. So this is a program where we fund smaller coordination projects with Public Works that don't warrant their own standalone CIP project. Currently, we use it to fund some force main and water main betterments in conjunction with the Wichita Road project at the interchange. Funding will also be used for water and sewer upgrades for the Nimmo Parkway Phase 7 project, as well as for projects in coordination with the efforts to address flooding in the Windsor Woods and Princess Anne Plaza area. Okay, that's the last one there now. So it's 6088. So Cleveland Street Water Sewer Improvements, another coordination project with Public Works. As you know, they're building a flyover, and they're going to reconstruct Cleveland Street. So we have some work in that area to do, and we'll be replacing water and gravity sewer mains. So this work is scheduled to start this coming fall. All right. My concluding slide is here. Thank you for your continued support of the Water and Sewer CIP program. We do support an essential services to our citizens, and we address aging infrastructure with our CIP program, as well as ensure compliance with regulatory mandates.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Questions or comments, please?
I just have one comment and one question. First of all, when I go out to town halls, I always say, you know, if you travel a lot, you'll really know how good our water tastes, because in lots of parts of the country, you have to buy bottled water to brush your teeth. That's sad to say, but it's true. And they think they do a fine job. My question was on, as we look at the pump stations, as we look, you know, one of the things we could see from the storms in Texas and in Florida was how long it took them to get their water and sewer systems back up because they were infiltrated by, well, especially the water part, infiltrated by the nasty floodwaters and all the stuff that came with it. So I assume that over time we're hardening our pump stations to be watertight, and we're looking more carefully at these places so that when we can recover quickly, should we have a bad event, that we'll be able to get our potable water systems back online in a timely fashion. That's just a comment. I know you're probably looking at that, but that is very important, I think. But my question was on slide 14. We said we're abandoning the old water mains. Are we going to be just taking the risk of when they structurally fail? Or are we going to be backfilling and pumping them with sand?
Yeah, they get flowable fill, or they get removed, depending on
Okay, I just didn't want to
needs.
abandon. I just was out of curiosity. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Rosemary, please.
Thank you. So when we are replacing some of these really old pipes, are you going to be putting in the same size? Are you putting in a bigger size? Some of the...
For this particular one, we're looking at a section now near Great Neck Road where HSD is going to do some work, and we'll collaborate with them. In that area, we will replace the 16 and the 20-inch with a single 30-inch main. So we will try to maintain capacity or increase capacity where it's needed, and we usually do very detailed hydraulic modeling to see whether there are any benefits in upsizing. At the same time, we need to make sure that we can provide services to customers, so you cannot easily tap into a 30-inch main, so we will have to probably have a smaller main in parallel to that still. But yes, we usually study and replace with an appropriate size.
Other questions or comments? I want to echo, again, y'all doing a great job, and I'm not going to ask you how much cash y'all have today. but I am, because I am going to ask a question that I asked a year or two ago, and we weren't doing well, the minority contracting. These type of contracts, fit perfect where we could do some increasing along those lines. Has that gotten better?
I think it's still a struggle, Mayor. I pay attention. We have detailed evaluations of all of our contractors that we use, and I'll be honest, it's a struggle. It continues to be a challenge.
I think we got to work on our contractors then. I mean, we've gotten ourselves in a box, and we got to get out, we need to do better. All right, any other questions or comments? Thank you all so very much.
Thanks, guys.
All righty.
Well,
Shore Drive Corridor, past, present, and future.
yes, sir. It dawned on us on road projects and water projects and bridge projects that there's a lot going on Shore Drive. And Mr. Cal Kassir joins us today. You're chairman of your Bayfront Advisory Committee. And so David Jarman's here to just give you an overview on many of the things going on in the northern end of the city.
David, nice to have you with us.
All right. Thanks, Phil. All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council. My name is David Jarman with the Transportation Division and Public Works Engineering. Appreciate the opportunity to come talk to you today about Shore Drive. We're going to go through a quick overview, a little bit of history, and talk about some projects. That'll be some of the big highlights there. I wanted to start off and just make sure we're all straight on the overview. I know everybody knows where the corridor is, but just kind of highlight, we're talking about Shore Drive from Diamond Springs to 83rd Street. It's about 9 miles of a 4-lane divided roadway. And as much as I know this is going to disappoint you, I'm not going to read this slide, okay? But this just gives you some highlights of some things that have occurred on Shore Drive, some major milestones that a lot of these, the actions taken by City Council as part of the history of that project, dating all the way back to 1997 and actually even beyond that. We get questions a lot of times asked about how did the phasing, how was that derived on Shore Drive? And so the phasing really came from the 2002 Shore Drive Transportation Study. And in that study, they recommended some of the layout and breakdown of how we could phase the projects for construction and improvements out there. So that was kind of refined and improved, and what you have before you is the kind of the end product of that. So I wish I could tell you that the phases always work out 1, 2, 3, left to right, but it never works out that way. And even if it did, I don't think we'd ever build them that way. So it's just the way things work sometimes. Completed projects. We'll walk through some of these projects real quick. We've got 9 projects here for you. We'll walk through these real briefly for a total of just shy of $17 million. Starting off with Shore Drive demonstration project. This was going back a ways. This was the first project for improvement of Shore Drive corridor from Marlin Bay to Shady Oaks. And this project included pedestrian and vehicular improvements for safety. We also did intersection improvements, and we had a multi-use pass out there. That project was completed in 2006 for a total cost of $5.5 million. The next project we have is the Shore Drive interim safety improvements. This was a project that council gave us $1 million. Shore Drive Safety Task Force recommended some improvements. We did some quick hitter projects right up front in 2006 and 2007. And then over the course of the next 4 years, we went out there and did some other improvements that came up. These were things like replacing sidewalk, improving crosswalks, and some warning flashers. So this was kind of a quick hitter project. We got a lot of bang for the buck out of that. Lake Joyce Crossing, this was a 10-foot wide pedestrian bridge that we built on the south side of Shore Drive at Lake Joyce. It was a 700-foot long. Again, this was completed in 2012. Construction cost of $520,000. Shore Drive shoulder improvements. This is about 3.5 miles of shoulder improvements that were done from Kendall Street to 83rd Street. This included widening the shoulder, adding pavement markings and markers, and adding rumble strips out there for safety. There were 2 phases. First was completed in November 2011, and then the second in March of 2013 for a total cost of $3 million. The next improvement out there was the Shore Drive sense of arrival. This came from the Bayfront Advisory Commission, trying to give a sense of identity out here in the Bayfront area. And basically consisted of putting banner flag poles up at some various locations. You can see those on the drawing there around the area. And those were completed in May of 2016 for a total cost of $104,000. Next project is the Shore Drive bike facilities. This project consists of about 3.5 miles of improvement from Greenway Road to Diamond Springs. And this was kind of a multiple outcome project where we had some shoulder improvements that needed to be done, overlay that needed to be done. We wanted to extend some turn lanes and add a new turn lane at Jack Frost Road. So all that was incorporated in one project from May of 16 to February 2017. We even had federal funding in there just to mix things up a little bit for a total cost of $4.4 million. Greenway Road sidewalk. This was a project. We had about a half mile of pedestrian improvements, asphalt path, and 5-foot sidewalk. It included some curb and gutter and driveway replacement. That was completed in November of 2017 for a total project cost of $467,000. Let's talk about some current projects that are going on right now on the Shore Drive corridor. And you'll notice here we've got 6 projects listed for a total cost of about $225 million. A couple of big ones in there we'll talk about. The first 2 slides, these are really placeholders right now. I'm not going to give you a stormwater update because you're getting those pretty regular, but we put those in here as placeholders just as a reminder of what's going on in Shore Drive. So these are the first 2 slides talking about the phasing for the 7151 project, which you're very familiar with. So it brings us to the next big project, Lessner Bridge replacement. I think everyone's familiar with that. Project's about 86% complete. We're looking to finish the construction, the final construction in September 2018. Right now we're tracking to have the bridges complete and open by July of 2018 of this year. So a few more months, have that wrapped up. And total project cost is just a little less than $116 million. The Lessner Bridge Municipal Wharf, this was the temporary bulkhead that was built with the project. And we're right now seeking a permit or a modification to make that a permanent wharf out there. And we listed some of the uses up there. I think council's been briefed on this. I don't think this is new to anyone. The construction was complete on that in 2015, and total project cost about $1.1 million. East Stratford Road intersection improvement. This is a new traffic signal we're going to put here with pedestrian crossing signals just to allow safer access across Shore Drive. You can see this is kind of a weird intersection here with these side streets coming in. So there's some safety issues there. We want to try to get that improved as best we can. Looking to start construction on that in October of 2018, sometime this fall, and total project cost of $600,000. Shore Drive repaving, this is within the limits of Shore Drive Phase 4, and originally Shore Drive Phase 4 had kind of been pushed out, and so operations was thinking that the road was deteriorating a little bit and we need to go out there and do an overlay. So we've funded Phase 4 now, but even with that, it's still a little bit further out, and so operations still wants to go out there and go ahead and improve the roadway while we're waiting to get the project designed and finished to go to construction. So this is, we think, going to happen in the fall for a total cost of about $300,000. Shore Drive Phase 3, this is the 1 mile segment on the east side of Shore Drive that was currently in design. with all these shore drive projects, we're not adding capacity. It's one important thing to note. We note up there retains 4 lanes. So there's no capacity expansion. We're doing vehicular and pedestrian safety improvements. We're adding multi-use path. We're obviously dealing with stormwater issues out there as well. So we've just finished up the 90% review, and our consultants working on addressing those comments. We're currently doing utility relocations, coordinating with Dominion and the other companies, and acquisition and looking to start construction in August of 2019. Total project cost of $24.4 million. We've got a rendering here we wanted to show you just so it's clear what's going on. This is just an example of Red Tide and Shore Drive. And if you look, we'll kind of fade that in. You can see the improvements there. And I'll go, let me see if this will work. It actually will work, okay. So you can see kind of not a lot as far as sidewalks. Things are kind of a little disjointed there. And with the new improvements, you'll see the multi-use path, entrances are well defined, the bike lanes out there. So a lot of those amenities that we've kind of talked about are coming to fruition. This is a typical section view out there at Red Tide looking east. And you can see kind of the similar thing. And when we're not adding capacity, when you look at it, it doesn't really change a whole lot. So I wish I could tell you, wow, it's a lot different. It's not really different. But you can see the bike lane, you can see the multi-use path. So those kind of jump out at you. All right, so let's talk about future projects. We've got 7 projects listed here, and we'll kind of walk through each of these. Waterman's Walk, this was a concept that's been around since, I guess, the late 90s with a lot of the shore drive corridor studies. But this is just a good way to connect the north side and south side of Shore Drive and provide a recreational amenity there. And council, I think, has been briefed on that. We're looking to start construction on that sometime in the fall of this year. A total project cost of $520,000. The next project is Pleasure House Road Phase 2. These are some improvements we've got scheduled on the north side of Shore Drive, about 0.9 miles worth of improvements. They're going to be bike accommodations, sidewalk, some drainage improvements. And you see, if you look at the picture, in the bottom portion, you can see the goat path and no curb and gutter. And then in the further reach, you can see the sidewalk and the curb and gutters. That's kind of what we're trying to fix, is those little issues there. That's scheduled to start construction in July of 2022. The total project cost of $3 million. The sister project to that is the Phase 1 improvements on the south side, about 0.4 miles. Very similar type of project, similar type of improvements. This one's scheduled to start construction in July of 2023. Total project cost of $1.3 million. Shore Drive Phase 4. This is the 0.6 mile segment on the west side of Leshner Bridge. Again, similar improvements, no capacity expansion. We're improving safety for pedestrians and motorists, multi-use paths. We're currently at 15% design. Project cost is $14.2 million, and we're looking to start construction on that in September of 2023. Diamond Springs Road sidewalk improvements. This is kind of filling in some gaps on Diamond Springs Road, but leading to Shore Drive. It's about 1,600 feet of improvements out there. It's funded through the Traffic Safety Improvement Program. Total project cost of $270,000. Shore Drive and Lake Joyce sidewalk. This is another sidewalk filler project here, where we got sidewalk on the north side of Shore Drive at Lake Joyce to provide safety improvements out there. This is funded in the TSI program as well. Total project cost is $230,000. I'm sorry, it's in the program, not currently funded. Sorry, $230,000. And Shore Drive Phase 2. This is a 1 mile segment from Oliver Drive to Treasure Island. Again, similar improvements, not doing capacity improvements, but vehicular and pedestrian improvements, multi-use path, hardscape, and landscaping. This one is requested but not funded, and we've got a total project cost of $24.3 million.
Thank you so much. Questions or comments? All right, well, we thank you.
All right, thank you. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
David.
Very much.
Appreciate it.
Great update.
Gal Cassier, too.
Okay, the Housing Resource Center. Oh, and I hear that I've met with Andy Fine and Harry Lester. They said the art for the bridge is going to be spectacular.
Oh, yeah.
Spectacular.
The canoes is going to be awesome.
Yeah. Huh?
It's really beautiful.
I've heard it's going to be spectacular.
beautiful.
That's great.
It'll be impressive. I got this.
Almost fully.
Only 11 on
Yeah, all right.
You told me that too.
Well, we only got 11 here, so.
All
Coming
right.
up, Ben. Like
Have
how?
this already at our seat. We already have it at our
Andy,
seat.
we're glad to have you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Happy to be here to talk about a great project. I think that
And Ray, glad to see you.
I guess I'll be able to follow along. You can do intros.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, members of council, thank you for the opportunity to talk about this great project. First thing that I want to talk to you is about the great team of people who are involved, because it's certainly not just the Department of Housing. So with us today, Department Director Danette Smith, Department Director Dr. Heidi Kuhlberg, who are key players in the building and overseeing significant services that are going to be delivered there. Also, we have Mr. Tom Nicholas, I think, yes, and Kevin Jensen and Tim Oliver from Public Works, who have helped guide the construction and also the management of operations and maintenance. Also, here's Mr. Tim McCarthy, current head of the Beach Community Partnership, and working with homelessness for more than 30 years, along with me and others. And Mr. Ray Bjorkman, chairman of VB Home Now and the original chairman of the Beach Partnership. And we're going to talk more about VB Home Now in a second. And a couple of our key players, including Jasmine, who helped put this presentation together. My staff didn't seem to have seats in the building, but I want to point out Karen Percillo has been the project manager for us. Ruthie Hill is our homeless services administrator, and several other folks. So you'll get to meet
everyone here. We're delighted with the progress.
Did I miss anybody? Okay, good. So this is the first of its kind in the region. There's not very many. There might be one similar in the state, maybe a couple up in Northern Virginia, but we think it's going to be an incredible contribution to our community. At a glance, you know where it's located at Southern Boulevard and Witch Duck Road. It's going to open this summer. The building, the construction cost, including furnishings and fixtures, is about $19 million. The size is about 60,000 square feet. Waller, Todd, and Sadler are our architects. SB Ballard is building it. So the project history, just briefly, we started when you authorized the acquisition of the site back in June of 2012. We've gone through extensive public involvement as far as the design of the building, as far as community acceptance and design. And so we are now we are nearing construction completion, and we hope to open, as I said, this summer. We're going to do a phased opening plan. We're going to get staff in the building, contractors in the building, probably have a grand opening, and then invite all of the participants into the building by later in the summer. The purposes have always been to provide a one-stop shop that significantly enhances our system of housing and services. It's also really important to remember that this is a community-wide effort, and we have a huge variety of players and people who want to contribute, and that's going to add incredible value to our efforts. We want to be a good neighbor in the area that we're located in, and we also have always said we're going to try to reduce the impact of homelessness at the oceanfront. So I'm going to go over each of the things that will be in the building individually. Our department has the main role on the first floor, which is where most of the services will occur. We're working with the Human Services Department, which has an entrance on the first floor as well. And we're going to have oversight of our operations and maintenance contractor. We're integrating all of our services with all of our providers, and we'll talk more about that in a second. So when people come in the building, the front door is right in front of that blue area, and our department staff and volunteers will greet them and bring them in to do outreach. We will intake them, do assessments, and do appropriate referrals to services both inside the building and outside the building. We'll also have a prevention function, keep people from becoming homeless, a diversion function, which is if you are homeless but there's any other possibility of housing you besides going into the homeless system, we want to get you into that. And so all of those functions will be operated by our department on the first floor. We will have a dining room and a kitchen because we have people living there, and there'll be food provided. We also have 2 classrooms where we expect to offer a wide variety of training and education opportunities. So it would be great if on the day we open this building there would be no more people who were homeless in Virginia Beach, but that's not likely to be true. And so we are going to have a day services center for people who are still on the street and unfortunately homeless. where people can connect and do laundry, showers, and connect to our staff and be referred to opportunities that exist. It's the same thing as what's happened at the Lighthouse Center, but it needs to continue because, as I said, there will still be people who are homeless at the time. The health clinic, we're going through the process of selecting a provider. The health clinic will offer health services both to people in the building and people in the community. And we had a great meeting today with a potential provider. The health services will not be supported by the city, but the creation of the clinic is enough to bring a provider in who can provide self-supporting and other health subsidies brought to bear for that population. So that's going to be a great addition. We're going to have a single adult shelter with 49 beds, and we're going to have beds for males and females and people with diverse needs in the shelter. And there's some upstairs, most of the shelter is upstairs, and some of it is downstairs to ensure accessibility. We're going to have family interim housing. It's going to be 10 motel-style rooms with about 40 total beds. It's going to help keep families off the street. We're going to help them get housed as soon as possible. And we're going to work with Virginia Beach Schools Project Hope to make sure children who may be housed there keep in school and get all the support they need to succeed in school. Samaritan Houses bring an $85,000 federal grant with them to help support the services they provide there. We're going to have permanent housing, 29 apartments plus one for a resident manager. It will provide longer-term housing for people, single adults. There'll be case management, again, with the goal of getting people into housing other housing as soon as possible. But this is intended for people to have leases there and stay for as long as is necessary. And the experience in other providers is about a 3-year average stay. The Department of Human Services will occupy the entire 3rd floor. They'll have at least 47 staff providing multiple services. And they have conference rooms, offices for eligibility interviews, and classrooms as well. And we'll talk more about that in a second. So our teams, we have a big set of people working with us. And we've already gone over the construction and the architect. We also have Human Services, Public Health, Parks and Rec, which will be doing landscape. We have ComIT, which will obviously provide the IT services. Public Works is guiding us through all aspects of the building management. And then we'll have at least 5 providers of the different services in the building, plus a really healthy group of volunteers and community organizations. So I wanted to talk about our approach to getting these services done. We don't believe we're the key service provider. We're the group that makes it happen and ties it all together. But sometimes we have to step in and fill gaps, as we did a couple of years ago. We've used a competitive proposal process to select in the process of selecting our service providers. And we're contracting out the key building management processes. So I'll tell you more about that. I mentioned the non-competitive award to Samaritan House, which we're going to propose because they're bringing an $85,000 federal grant to support that work. We have an intent to award letter out to ABM Incorporated, which will manage all operations, maintenance, food service, and security. We have RFPs out for the day services, the single shelter, the health clinic, and apartment operations. And with the purchasing division, we're working to select those as we speak. Oh, so the building management is basically by our department, with the exception of the Human Services, which will manage the 3rd floor. Most of the services will be done by nonprofits and the for-profit operations provider. And of course, our city departments will have their basic responsibilities at the building. Safety and security is critical. We are planning for safety and security with the help of police, fire, EMS, risk management, occupational safety, Virginia Beach Public Schools, the Department of Human Services, and Virginia Wesleyan, which has worked with lots of us on other issues and have a lot of experience. We're going to have physical controls for security, cameras and access control on all exterior doors, on many interior doors, security guards 24/7, 365, camera monitoring. We're going to have a visitor ID system. Everyone's going to be trained in security and safety, and we'll have a liaison. Captain Orr has already said we'll have a liaison from his precinct. We're going to control safety also through hours of operation, a screening process, and we're going to have lots of escorts and ambassadors for people in the building using volunteers to do that. The Housing Resource Center is a great expansion that you have made possible of our homeless services system, but it is not the system itself. It adds new shelter and permanent housing. It brings everyone together, and it provides integration of services, and we're really excited about how we're going to integrate with the Department of Human Services to get way better outcomes for people who come in. And it's also already demonstrated that it has ignited incredible community interest in working with the city. And in every area that we talk to people about, we see huge interest in workforce planning. We see huge interest in making donations. And we see huge volunteer interest. We have a long list of people who say, I want to work at that building. Tell me what I can do. So we're working on all of those now to get that in place before the building opens. So how do people access services? Well, we just handed out those little cards that say you call the Regional Crisis Hotline. There are two numbers, one on the screen and one on the cards you have, but they both work. That is how a homeless person or a person with a housing crisis should access our systems. So that's, if people ask you, the number on that card is how to access services. The Housing Resource Center is still the same. Although people will walk up to the front door, we prefer that they call, and they get assessed by calling the call center, and then they get secondarily assessed by our staff. We also then, once we do the assessment, they get referred to the appropriate housing and services. I want to point out that we are not doing first come, first served. We are serving the most vulnerable and the people with the most need first, and we've been doing that for several years now. That will continue at the Housing Resource Center. The Department of Human Services will have multiple services there, and Danette is here to correct what I say, but this is they'll have a streamlined approach to service delivery, also in their own shop, a one-stop model of services, and using a strength-based approach to service. They will have rapid access to their services. We have a completely integrated reception with them. They're going to improve customer service, provide prevention, continuity of care, and working with us to reduce homelessness. They're going to have a new integrated services team within their department to bring access to all the services people need more quickly. And they'll have the listed services here as well in the building, which will not only complement services for the people who seek services at the building, but it's also always been intended that they serve the community around the building. So all of these things have a dual purpose. So in addition to what the Department of Human Services does, we've got a complete integrated approach called No Wrong Door. So no matter whether you come into the clinic, the Human Services Department, in the front door, or through the Day Services Center, the same things we will get you to what you need no matter which door you come in. We have one client information system. Everyone will know who's in the building, who needs what services, and referrals will be essentially instant through that unified system. And we're working continuously with the Department of Human Services to make sure this is the best it can be. I want to point out that the whole purpose of the Housing Resource Center is to get people into housing. And so I want to point out the opportunities we have for that. Part of that is new housing. Those apartments in the Housing Resource Center are permanent housing. Now, permanent can mean many things, but it means at least a year of a leased housing unit. We also have the regional efficiency apartments that this council has helped to fund over the last 10 years. There's over 100 of those that we control that are Virginia Beach units throughout the region that people can move into. And then we're really looking forward to the new Price Street apartments and the new Renaissance apartments, which will be affordable housing within walking distance. And we are working closely with Franklin Johnson to make sure that appropriate clients can take advantage of those units when they come online. This is a really exciting thing, too. Another goal for everyone who comes to the building is an employment or training plan. That's a key to sustainability and future success and being housed. We are going to link people to employment readiness training, job training, and we're going to work closely with the Department of Human Services and the Department of Economic Development. In addition, when we put our RFP out for operations and maintenance, we asked the proposers to say what they could do to help train and or employ participants. And so all of our main provider, our main contractor, and all of their subcontractors have agreed to work on that with us. So we have those commitments. In addition, Steel Incorporated has made donations to VB Home Now and has a commitment to do employment and training. Charles Barker has the same, and we expect many more. So we think working with Human Services and our donors and economic development that we're going to have an incredible set of opportunities for people to get employed or trained for employment. As I said, we're going to try to maximize the utilization of volunteers in the building. We are going to use volunteers as receptionists, as building ambassadors to show people around and bring them where they're going. Hope to use them as drivers, provide support in day services, and probably as other functions as we can determine. We also know there are businesses and faith-based providers who already do and want to do more of bringing services to the people in the building. So this is another great opportunity where the existence of this building is bringing great community interest and support that will add much more value to the building. Some people have asked, what's the impact on what's happening out in the community? Well, we know our family shelter right off the bat increases capacity by 40 beds, and Samaritan House has some family shelter which will continue. In single shelter, right off the bat, we'll increase our capacity by 49 beds, and then we'll see what happens after that. But that will be a big new step forward for the community. And everyone's asked about the winter shelter program, which has been in existence for over 30 years. We know that we are going to run the winter shelter program next winter. We're not sure that it will be the same winter shelter program, but we're going to have discussions with our providers to figure that out, because we know we can't guarantee that no one will be on the street next winter. We want to avoid exposure to the most extreme winter weather. Impact of the Housing Resource Center on the ocean front. Ever since we had the discussion with this council back in 2011 and 2012, we've had the goal of reducing the impact of homelessness at the ocean front. So there's several things that are going to happen. The Lighthouse Center will close. We'll transition that out as we open the HRC. We are engaging service providers in what we call the Transition Coalition to bring people together and figure out, now that all the great variety of services are at Witch Duck Road, how are you going to change what you do? Because to the extent that services there bring people there, we want to try to reduce or ameliorate that. We are going to have a transportation plan to help people get to the Housing Resource Center, because unless people can get there, they can't take advantage of it. And we're also going to continue with our outreach team, which this council helped create several years ago, so that people know where to go and how to get there so that they can take advantage of services. But I do have to add that it is still possible for a free person to go on a public street at any time they choose. And whether you're homeless or not, you have that right. And so that's an important thing for everyone to remember. We've had the Beach Community Partnership for 9 years now. Since 2009, our community has come together working to address homelessness and been before you many times, most recently when you approved our Community of One plan back last fall. And so they've been involved in this since day one. We recently started what we call HRC Engage, which is an open forum for neighbors and businesses and anyone interested in supporting this effort to come together and learn about it and to help us know what issues are out in the community so they can be there, so we can help address it together. So we had a first meeting, we had 50 people there. We're having another meeting in April, and we'll continue that as long as necessary to keep ongoing communication. We also have a great communications and marketing plan over the next few months to make sure the community knows all the great things that are going to happen at this building. Ray Bjorkman is here as the leader of VB Home Now. The mayor initiated this, and it was formed to support and enhance the HRC and what happens there. Ray just told me today that that number is out of date, that it's higher than 400,000 in commitments, and he just doesn't have time to go hear all the people who want to give. So we'll make more time for him. He's only been volunteering for 9 years, so he'll keep it up for a few more, and we'll be good.
And we thank you for all that good work.
I was a lot younger.
We all were.
So I wanted to talk about, well, what are the results that happen from this? And some of these are not technically outcomes or outputs, but some are actual outcomes. With our shelter, we'll have at least 17,000 nights of emergency shelter. We estimate about 225 different individuals will be sheltered. And out of those 225, we expect about half of them to actually move into permanent housing. In our family shelter, we'll have 3,650 household nights of shelter. We expect to shelter 48 families, and a very large percentage of them, 43, would move into permanent housing. And of course, the 29 apartments will provide a year of housing each year for 29 people. We also will have a prevention and diversion program that I mentioned, which will help avoid people coming into the system, which is the most important thing, because once you're homeless, that's a high predictor of returning to homelessness. That's a new program, and so we're really not going to go out on a limb and tell you how many people we might help, but it will be in operation. Our day services center, as the Lighthouse Center currently does, we expect to help between 400 and 500 people, or 450, and for over 48,000 meals will be served. And that's a big opportunity to bring the community in and to supplement and enhance that. But people who live there will need meals, and they'll be served them. We will have the health services, and as I said, we have a provider who looks like they're going to do a great job. Several hundreds of people will be able to be seen by that provider, both participants in the building and community residents. And as I said, the Department of Human Services will serve people with all of the staff there and help serve the people who we see and who are homeless or about to become homeless. We'll have the job training that I mentioned. Because of what the building has in it, there'll be up to 60 people from Human Services, about 20 from our staff. And we have space for multiple nonprofits and faith providers. We're going to have a permanent office for our faith coalition to be there and coordinate services. And haven't even mentioned all the things that other providers are going to bring to the building to help people get out of homelessness. I would just like to say that this council and the city manager have taken an incredible step by making this possible, and we all thank you very much and assure you that we're going to make the best of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We've got a few questions or comments. John Ern, Rosemary, then Bobby Dyer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, this is such a great news story. It's great to see this really finally happen. There was an article earlier that discussed this and indicated that the catalyst of this was to move the homeless issues off of the oceanfront, and that's not exactly true. I mean, those of us that were here remember that we had looked at several different sites to be able to move the Lighthouse Center and expand that were actually at the oceanfront. And within that process, we started to recognize that if we were really going to have an impact on homeless in converting people that are formerly homeless to not being homeless anymore, we were missing a big component of that, which was housing. And all of the sites that we looked at in the oceanfront area were impacted by ACUS. So we could have put in all of these other services, but we wouldn't have been able to have the housing component. And so, you know, after an awful lot of searching, we ultimately picked this site. And I'm so happy that we're here, and I'm really excited to see what kind of impact we're going to have with this facility. Mr. Friedman had said many years ago, which has stuck with me to this day, that in the city of Virginia Beach, the way we've historically handled homelessness is we've made being homeless a full-time job. And the reason for that is that we have all of these really great services, but this is a big city. And so you go here to wash your clothes, and you go to another place to get your career counseling, and you go to another place to get something to eat, and at the end of all that process, you're done for the day, and now you got to try and find a place to sleep. And so to be able to have all this under one roof, I think, is going to pay huge dividends. But I think it's important to recognize that we weren't trying to put it in any one particular location. It was really to put it in a location that could satisfy all those needs in one place, and hopefully be able to make some differences in people's lives.
Great, thank you, John. Rosemary?
This is a really great thing, and I agree with everything that John said, and also by having so many partners, it's a community buy-in, so we all own this. It's for everyone that has come to the table and really helped. I think it was probably about a month ago, I called Andy up because I was out walking my dog, and a lady came up to me and said, I need a room for tonight. I don't have a room for tonight. And I looked at her, and then all of a sudden she was gone, and it really touched me. I thought, I don't know what to tell this lady. And he told me that we had hotline cards. And are these the ones that you're talking about? Right. And so that if we come across someone, that there's this hotline so we can get help for a person like this. And so I just want to make sure that all the hotels have them, because people could come in and say, I really need a room for tonight. We all need to have them. And so we need to really get these cards out so that when someone needs our help, we can give it to them. I mean, it's one thing we have the center, but it's also getting that word out. So it really touched me that night. That lady said, I really need a room. Please, can you help me? And then all of a sudden she was like gone, and I felt so bad about it. So let's take advantage of this really great tool.
Yes, ma'am.
Bobby D.
Thank you. And I tell you, it's great to be part of a community that is so engaged and working together, you know, toward this most noble cause. It takes a lot of players. And Andy, I really want to give you a lot of credit. I want to give credit to our human services, to our health services, to all the volunteers that help out. You know, it really takes a lot of people rowing in the right direction to do this. I remember back in 2004, you remember we went to Willett Hall with Empower Hampton Roads. And at that time, the noble mission of people like Tim McCarthy and Teresa Stanley was to make sure that people had housing and, you know, moving in that direction to see how far we have come, you know, since this. I think is a tribute to, you know, so many people. And, you know, having Cloverleaf, you know, that opened, what, about 12 years ago?
Yes.
You know, I can tell you how integrated that is as part of that College Park community.
Right.
A lot of folks don't even know, you know,
exactly.
what's there. It's just there and, you know, doing the mission.
Mm-hmm.
And Andy, if you can comment, a couple of months ago, remember we had that candlelight vigil at the Lighthouse on a very cold night?
Right.
And how many names? Can you tell folks what that was about? And I think it'll really bring some good points home.
We've had the candlelight vigil for many years now to remember people who died while they were homeless in Virginia Beach. And someone may have to help me with the number of people who that is, but it's a significant number, probably as many as 100 or more.
Yeah.
Barbara?
We've been talking about homelessness for so many years, and everybody has worked so hard, and I know there have been a lot of people who have been served and so forth, but is it really endless? I mean, how are we really going to be able to tell what progress we're making and what's left to do? I know this is, you know, this is going to be a big thing that we're going to be able to do. Like you said, there are always going to be some folks who are still out there in the woods, and, you know, is it?
So, Mrs. Henley, I think we have made some huge strides in our ability to understand what's happening. We have a great data system that all of our providers are using, and we have measures that we can report and will report to you about. One of the things is how many people become newly homeless in any given time period, how long they stay homeless, and how successful they are at getting permanent housing. And we now have the ability to get that information, and we will start reporting that to you probably in a quarterly manner. Now, homelessness, and the other part of it is, you know, the slogan is making it rare, brief, and non-recurring. So rare means that we're preventing homelessness, and we now have, and when the HRC opens, we'll have a much more robust prevention function that says, you know, I need $500 to pay X, or I'm going to be on the street. And with the help of donors and the city and other funding sources, we're going to try to do that as much as possible to make it homelessness rare. The brief part is about housing first. So our community has integrated the philosophy of housing first, which means housing is the fundamental thing that cures homelessness. And sure, you may have other things you need to do to stay housed, but once we get you housed, all those services will be provided. And non-recurring means that we're following up, that we have the ability to do outreach to people who have been recently housed and make sure they have what they need. And with our great set of community partners, we'll be doing much more of this with the help of the resources at the Housing Resource Center. But nothing can really prevent the causes of homelessness, family breakup, financial troubles, mental health or mental illness issues. Those will always be with us, but if we can stop people from falling into homelessness, if we can get them out of homelessness more quickly, we'll make a big dent in it.
Ben?
I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank two people. I'd like to thank Mr. Ray Bjortman for leading the VB Home Now, which has been a tireless, huge time commitment for the last several years, and he has not complained once, and so thank you very much for going out and doing what needs to be done to raise the money. And I'd also like to thank Jeanette Smith, who I don't think gets enough praise. I think she has the hardest job, or one of the hardest jobs in the city, and so thank you for facilitating all of these programs and making sure that they run smoothly.
A great partner here
Well,
and here.
well, thank you both.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Other questions or comments? I guess I'll conclude, and I think I'm speaking for the entire council. Thank you to everyone in this room. You know, a lot of progress has been made, but I don't want to forget how hard people have worked over the years with limited resources to really try to do a good thing. But it looks like we're getting ready to cross the finish line, Andy, so.
Yes, sir.
Congratulations to everyone, and a great big thank you to everyone for all their help over the years, and looking forward to a great success with this project.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all as well.
Okay. All righty. We're going to go through the tip. John, you wanted this presentation, if I recall. Correct?
Ray, thanks very much.
It's not the one I asked for. It's just a presentation. It doesn't have what I asked for, which was all the background, the modeling, all the justification, parameter values. It's just it's a spreadsheet, but it's no analysis.
Okay. See what we got.
Yep.
Okay, David Bradley, we welcome you, sir.
Can't take it to the bank and get money.
So as an introduction for David's presentation, it's really a continuation of our providing information to the city council and to the viewing public so that they understand that your creation in the 93-94 timeframe of the tourism investment program, dedication to continue to support your largest industry, tourism, remains healthy, and it is a lead-in to give you an update of what you're going to see in your in the city manager's proposed FY19 budget that you will get a full briefing on next Tuesday, a week from now. But we thought as a lead into that, we would continue the evolution of where the tip is and what the tip can provide and how we're going to utilize that in my budget proposal. So David's going to back up a little bit to refresh you all where we were so that you can grasp the last set of decisions that you made a year ago and carry us forward.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hanson. Also have some extra copies that you want to follow on paper. So as the city manager said, this is really the fourth tip presentation, I think, since last June. This will be the second one since January that goes into a little more detail about the spreadsheet. So the just first beginning part of this presentation, I'm going to talk a little bit about the things that we talked about in January, especially, as Mr. Hanson said, for the viewing public that might be watching this for the first time. So just a reminder, the Tourism Growth Investment Fund was established in fiscal year 92-93. It's been part of council policy for a quarter of a century now. The Major Projects Fund, which supported the debt service associated with the Convention Center, Sandler Center, and the parking across from the aquarium, was established in fiscal year 02. And these two funds were merged into what is now the TIP Fund, Tourism Investment Program Fund, in fiscal year 12. So you can see the dedications that are associated with the TIP Fund. I'm also showing you where these other taxes go into other funds as well. But for the TIP Fund, it gets 5% of the hotel tax. It gets a $1 per day for 5 years associated with the hotel tax. 1.06% of the restaurant tax, all the amusement tax that we have in the city, and 5 cents of the current 75 cents of the cigarette tax.
So only 5 cents of the cigarette tax.
That's correct.
Okay. 75 cent tax. Got it.
All right. So these first three attachments, as Kevin pulls them up, you have seen before. But what I'm going to do is spend a little bit of time on attachment A, not as much on attachment B and C, because they were kind of the work in progresses that we were showing you in January, but really get to attachment 4, because that's what's going to be proposed in the city manager's budget next week. So Kevin Chatelier, by the way, from my office, is manning the computer. He's the one that puts the tip analysis together.
Kevin, thank you.
He's going to be showing kind of where the cursor, is up there, where we are. But let's just focus on fiscal year 18 if you can. So let me just kind of run you through that quickly to reorient you to this spreadsheet. So you can see in the darker blue there at the top, cigarette taxes, amusement taxes, hotel taxes. Those are the dedications that I just talked about on the PowerPoint presentation. In the light blue, there's some miscellaneous revenue that also goes to the TIP fund, about $1.5 million, parking tickets, beach rentals, and other tourism revenue, which would be things like franchise taxes. So in total, the revenue for fiscal year 18, as you adopted in May of 2017, was $39.5 million. Now we start getting into the expenditures, and you can see beach operations, beach maintenance in orange. I'm going to talk about them in total. Think about trash pickup on the beach grooming, maintaining the benches on the boardwalk, landscaping, the beautiful landscaping we have along the bikeway. That's covered in that. The TIP transit is the trolleys that we have. Then when you get into the pink area, this $4.6 million, think about beach events. So we're talking about Beach Street USA, Neptune Festival, Patriotic Festival, Holiday Lights, those type events. And then the big thing that I want you to concentrate on for now, because this is what's going to be the major change as we get into the fiscal year 19 budget, is this area in yellow. So when council adopted the budget in May of 17, the current budget, there were 3 projects that were going to be in place: Arena in-box, Arena out-of-box, and the 19th Street project. Those totaled $78 million. And you can see in yellow, we were going to pay 1% of the hotel tax to USM. We had event day costs that were going to be programmed, and that we had the resulting debt service associated with that $78 million. If you look across a little bit, past fiscal year 18, you can see that those totaled about $12 to $13 million, and that's the capacity that's now really been created with the arena no longer in play. So moving to the purple, you can see debt at $23.4 million. That's the existing debt that we have today. Then next is the Sports Center. When council adopted the budget, there was a $40 million project, and you can see what we were projecting for the debt service going out in fiscal year 20. The TIP fund does pay for street sweeping to the stormwater fund, so you can see that cost. But in total, the expenditures were $32.6 million. And when you look at revenue over expenditures, we knew that we were going to have almost $6.9 million revenue exceeding expenditures going in at the end of this year. And that, when added to the previous year's fund balance, which is around $13.5 million, will create that fund balance of $20.4 million that you're seeing there. And just for the public at home, fund balance, if you have revenue exceeding expenditures and it keeps accumulating, it's kind of like savings account, you're going to be increasing your fund balance. And the standard that we use is we compare our fund balance to the following year's revenue. And you can see there in fiscal year 18, we're at 50% of the following year's revenue. So the standard in the general fund that we use is 8 to 12%. So you can see a pretty healthy fund balance. And that's with the arena at this point. If you look across the years, fiscal year 19 forward, you can see what our projection of fund balance was going to be with the arena project. So it reached a low year in fiscal year 24 of $14.1 million, or 32%. So that was just briefly to kind of reorient you. I'm not going to spend as much time on B and C because that's where we were in January, kind of giving you a heads up of some of the discussion. But just briefly, attachment B was without the arena, so that yellow block was gone that I was showing you earlier. We did keep the 19th Street project in, so there was $13 million of that $78 million that remained. And you can see here, and I just point you kind of to the bottom line in this one, you can see the fund balance, increases significantly over time without the arena. And, reaching at least this $163 million by fiscal year 27. So attachment C, what we were showing you at this point in January is, could we cash fund the public pier? Was that a possibility? So you can look in fiscal year 20, you can see the $21.5 million that we had programmed in there. And in this scenario, the city manager had asked at this point, hey, can you do some scenario planning? We had some debt associated with some parking in there. But still, cash funding in this scenario, there's still significant fund balance moving forward, once again, well beyond the 8 to 12% that we use as part of the general fund. So what I really want to get to you today is attachment D. This is what your CIP and operating budget will look like next week when we present it to you. So this is the true update. So I am going to focus you now on fiscal year 19. In all of these numbers, you can probably see they've been updated since January. We're still working these numbers as we work through the budget process. City manager and the DCMs, deputy city managers, are meeting with all the departments, so we're reviewing all the information that they're requesting. So in total, revenue is $41.8 million in fiscal year 19, and you can see that's about $2.4 million higher than it is budgeted in fiscal year 18. This fund is doing well, so revenue will be increasing. You can see the updates to beach operations, beach maintenance, what the cost of the trolleys are that we're budgeting. Beach events has been updated a little bit. Existing debt has been updated a little bit as well, because in fiscal year 18, when we put the budget together, we thought there'd be a bond sale in the spring of 2017 that didn't occur. So that had to be updated a little bit. But what I want to focus you on now is these next few lines in the debt service, and this is what you're going to be seeing next week. First, there's still some unissued debt for Pacific Avenue, and we talked about that 19th Street has been brought forward, so that project is now in here. And you can see the resulting debt service that we're anticipating starting in fiscal year 19. For the Dome site, we have a $30 million music venue project that you'll be seeing. $5 million is budgeted in fiscal year 19. $25 million will be budgeted in fiscal year 20. and you can see the resulting debt service starting in fiscal year 21. Then we have dome site streetscape, $7.5 million. $3 million is budgeted in fiscal year 19 in the CIP. $4.5 million is programmed in fiscal year 20. And once again, you can see the resulting debt service starting out in fiscal year 21. Then we have the Sports Center. It's been updated. I think Mr. Williams was providing discussion a while back, and we were talking about, you know, the track and some of the other amenities that will be in there. So that's a $55 million project. $4 million has already been appropriated by council. There will be $51 million in fiscal year 19, and you can see the debt service starting in fiscal year 20. And then I'm sorry.
21.
It says 20.
No, it's 20.
It's 21 for the parking.
Oh,
that's right. Thank you, Maya.
no problem. And so finally, the beach and convention center parking, convention parking, $55 million. All right, Miss Philly, you happy now?
Y'all gonna label me
That's
that?
a big chunk of money. That's a lot of parking.
So there's $10 million that will be budgeted in fiscal year 19 in the CIP and $45 million in fiscal year 20. And once again, you can see the resulting debt service in fiscal year 21. So that is the debt service part of this analysis. These are the projects that will be funded solely by the TIP fund, the debt service with the revenue. So now we're kind of getting in this gold or beige area. So here's some of the things that will be cash funded. Once again, we still have the pier in fiscal year 20, cash funded at $21.5 million. You still see the streetscaping money that was in there. And then we are providing $500,000 for some preliminary design of the issues associated with the seal exhibit at the Virginia Aquarium. So that's in there as well. You'll see the area in red font at $1,259,000. Since the arena project is not going to occur, there were some expenditures that were incurred, and we are going to cash fund those out of this stream instead of having debt service since the project doesn't exist anymore. So in total, all those expenditures in fiscal year 19 is $33.6 million. And when you compare that to the revenue above of $41.9 million, you can see we'll have revenue over expenditures of $8.3 million in fiscal year 19, resulting in our projection of fund balance in fiscal year 19 of $28.7 million. So that's fully loaded. And if you look going across with fund balance, you can see that we reach a low number in our projections of fiscal year 21, $12.8 million, which is still 29% of the following year's revenue, much higher than our 8 to 12%. And what I also want to point out to council is if you look in the fiscal year 25 range, you'll see that fund balance is going to start building somewhat significantly again. That's because the convention center debt, the Sandler Center debt will start paying off. So there'll be another opportunity for a future council to invest in the resort area again. So just three closing remarks. We feel like this is a conservative forecast. We're using 4.5% interest on our bonds. We haven't had anything close to that in recent time. But when we're looking forward 2 or 3 years, we want to be conservative on something like that. We have not taken into account any fiscal impact that will result from the projects like the pier and some of these things as people spend more money. We're doing this analysis totally on trend analysis because we're trying to be conservative. And we also have a pretty aggressive debt issuance that we're showing in this that probably won't occur as quickly. And that's my presentation, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Questions or comments? Barbara?
When the arena was proposed, and there were times that the balance was down and needed the hotel folks agreed to another $1 a night.
Mm-hmm.
That is still in here.
That is correct, and you can see that, Mrs. Henley, if you go to row 6 on your sheet. You can see that number going across. It's going to end in mid-fiscal year 22.
Slide it down, Kevin.
So that's the additional $1 a night?
Yes, ma'am. And we have not assumed that that is going forward for the purposes of this analysis. Past the 5-year period. Past the 5-year period.
But you are assuming that it's going to
It's going to
stay
continue as council adopted.
there, won't happen. Okay. Now, what's the difference? Where are the transit, the TOTs, the transit occupancy taxes? Is that a hotel tax? It's all in there?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's been some confusion in some communities about how much money was coming in from the short-term rentals.
Right.
But that's all in the hotel taxes.
Tax.
Okay. So when you're saying hotel
But this doesn't
tax-
reflect Sandbridge's.
But that hotel room taxes would be everything that we take in from the hotels and the transit, except for the additional $1, and that's in the other line.
Yes.
Okay. And that additional $1 is hotels all over the city.
That's correct. And there's another $1, as you know, as I showed on that first slide, that goes to the TAP program, Tourism and Advertising Program.
John?
I heard you say that I'm talking about the revenues. I'm pretty confident you have your expenses down. My interest is on the revenue side. You said you weren't including the pier in your analysis, correct?
I'm not we're doing a trend analysis on this, so we're not assuming any of the fiscal impact from any of these projects that we're talking about.
Not assuming from the sports complex or from the dome site, from the wave pool, any of those things. So that means that those revenues that are up here, we would get those whether we did nothing.
That's correct. We're doing this on a trend analysis.
So that means if you have any belief in what the things actually themselves will project, then really, rather than saying what future councils can spend, rather than consuming, which I do appreciate the fact you're paying the pier for cash. I thank you for listening to that, because I think we should be able to, I've mentioned this before, either pay more for cash over time or reduce if we believe in our forecast it's still to come, reduce the terms of the bond, freeing up debt capacity, if this is what the council wants to do, to deal with the more pressing issue, which I constantly talk about, which is our need to have our debt capacity for flooding projects, flood control, maintenance, and also for roads. And we don't have to tie up our debt service to finance these projects. So this is status quo projections doing none of these investments.
It is the trend analysis based on current collections.
And to come, just make sure I got it, to come will be what we think that will change as a consequences of those projects when they IOC come online 2-3 years down the road, correct?
You're absolutely correct, Mr. Moss.
That does give you opportunity to address some things differently. I agree with you.
Is our most risk-averse way of doing business.
And I appreciate that. Mr. Jones has a question.
Thank you very much.
Yes, Mr. Jones?
Can you track for instance, the restaurant meals tax in the different sections of the city, where the origin of those taxes?
The answer is yes, but very cumbersome. When RACS comes online this fall, we're going to be able to pull that information, I think, a lot quicker. Right now, that's more of a manual exercise by the Commissioner of Revenue to be able to pull it. They've been able to do it for areas like the resort, but it does take them a lot of time. I think once RACS comes online, we'll be able to get that information more at our fingertips.
I have a follow-up, actually, Mr. Mayor, to that.
Okay, Jonathan Shannon.
Because we've tried, through RAC and the Advertising Advisory Committee, Lewis, we've worked with Phil's office to try and bifurcate all of the prepared foods and restaurant sales and sit-down restaurant sales and the rest of that. And so what David's talking about is when that new software comes online for his office, we should be able to drill down into those numbers a lot more.
Yeah, that should be valuable in the sense of you know, telling us truthfully how much of this revenue is produced by tourism versus just everybody that lives in the city and so forth.
Right. You know, the one thing that, as we're going through this peer process, I've had, and I don't think anyone's trying to tell me a story. I think they're trying to tell me what they believe is to be true. I've heard anywhere from $90 to $120 million in restaurant tax at the oceanfront. Again,
I've heard that as well.
Okay, so you're seeing the variation too, and I really would like to know. Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right. John, excuse me,
Me.
Shannon.
Well, that was my question too. Those numbers have been,
Well,
100 million, 120. So if they're so hard to get, where are these folks getting that number? Because they said, as I've spoken to several of them, that they pulled these numbers. Where have they been pulled from? How do they get that number?
Are we talking about the analysis that was on that brochure? Is that, I think part of it is also what are the taxes that are coming into each of the funds? Is that how?
There's
No, the
people
100
that are walking around with a document that they say they got somewhere from the city indicating taxes from resort.
I can tell you that the budget for restaurant meal taxes citywide.
Yeah, it's not that high.
Is $68.9 million.
Well, what I'm seeing is $120 million in sales, not
Correct.
not in taxes.
Correct. Okay. All right.
Sales.
All right.
That's sales, okay.
Please.
Just one more up, because I know we haven't got, this is just looking at the baseline revenues and making the investments. Just making sure that we understand, until we get the economic analysis and look at the revenues, some of if the revenues aren't, we don't know what the displacement is, and given what the displacement is, may change the merits of any of the things we choose to invest in.
But we will have that before we make decisions.
I want the public to view to
Right.
know that there's a difference between what we see here and the merits of the projects themselves.
Okay, I got a couple of things.
Yes, sir.
Oh, would you check some, please? I think this is one of the best things going, and I'm glad it was established at the time. But my thing to you is, I'd like the entire council to be supportive of this funding. And as I look to you, John, you supported this except for the emissions tax.
No, I said the admission and the meal tax distribution, which I still think is outstanding.
But I'm with you, except for, I believe the questions that are being asked about the restaurant tax are good, but I think we also have had information provided to us that is 24% to 34% of the people that are visiting here paying that tax. And I think that's been supplied to us, a range, and that's a range. But
I think it's still high.
But I mean, reduce, my thing to you is, I want us to buy off on this and say, this is a good project. For instance, 5 cents on the cigarette tax. Do we want to increase that? You follow where I'm coming from? And reduce the emissions to offset that. I want this council to be very comfortable, and the emissions tax is a fair argument, because every citizen in Virginia Beach does pay an emissions tax when they go somewhere. I'd welcome that type of discussion for us to basically, I think we could do it without any negativity on the numbers. I think we could hold them at the same, because I was just playing, if there's a 75-cent real estate tax, we're only using a nickel, and it's good for $753,000 at a nickel, and then reduce emissions maybe to half. I mean, I'm sincerely looking for the council to get behind something that they would say, this policy is solid and it's working. And I mean, the entire council is where I'm coming from.
Well, I agree with you that, Mr. Mayor, in terms of, I think all the baseline revenues, that's why I asked that specific question, are accurate. Whether or not that's the right allocation, giving the surpluses, and whether or not we shouldn't be looking at, my best example is, there's 164,700,000 residence days every year. There's, depending on who you talk to, there's somewhere between 15 and 25 million tourist days a year, depending upon who you talk to. And you go start looking at the meal taxes, it's hard to believe that tourism on 15% of the total days generates 34% of all the meal tax revenue. I just think that doesn't pass the rough test. I don't know what the right answer is. But the real issue...
But we're acknowledging we don't know the right answer, but we acknowledge it's a big chunk of money, though, too.
Exactly. Now, the real issue is, if we're running the surpluses, that this thing is what's the requirement for the revenues that are dedicated over the, not today, because we're not there yet, but in the long run. But do I agree with the baseline of the revenues? Yes. If the requirement is there, then it just says that citizens are paying a portion of the thing they get a return on investment on. Okay. But we just need to acknowledge that residents are paying some of the revenue that is in the tip is coming from residents.
And I just acknowledge that.
I agree. I think we're saying the same thing.
And if I may add,
please,
once we acknowledge that and know what that is, then we need to look at whether we should reallocate that money to other projects and other portions of the city.
But also, you know, I'm going to continue on if I could, because I have no problem, you know, with us looking, if we can finance something on the short term or pay for cash, that's smart. Now, also that being said, and again, I'm thinking out loud, debt limits. You know, if we've got a potload of money that can take on debt on its own right here, you know, why should we let that limit our capacity to go out if we have other revenues within the city that justify that debt?
I'm not the one that adopted the 3,000 per capita debt policy. I'm not the one that said if we borrowed that much money, it would stop the city and we'd get to lower our bond rating. The person that said that's at the end of the table. I'm the one that said we could be more aggressive, and I provided the revenue for that debt to boot. So I'm not disagreeing with you on that either, but I didn't generate that message.
I'm on a roll right now, and I just can't stop. No, but in all candor, though, I hope we take from this conversation, and there's still more to talk, I believe there's a way for us to maybe get something that I want the entire council to be behind this type of stuff. Because, you know, if this isn't something positive for our city, our citizens, and as you just said, we do have all the citizens using the restaurants, but we also have a convention center that's used by many, many people in the city as citizens as well. You know, and all right.
And the
great.
And the that far apart, Mr. Mayor.
I got John, then you, Barbara. I'm sorry.
I won't belabor it, Mr. Mayor, but when we have that discussion, you know, obviously we did get the data that had the 3 different methodologies for determining what percentage of the restaurant sales is attributed to out-of-town visitation. I went through and went about it a different way in terms of determining how many overnight visitors we have a year multiplied by the average length of stay, and then dividing that by 365 to come up with a unit that is a resident. And if you do it that way, the math still plays out that this is roughly representative of what is contributed.
I think we'd like to see that. That'd be great. Barbara?
I'd be happy.
There's been a lot of discussion around the city, apparently, about the whether or not these figures have been audited and this program has been audited. Would you address how that is all? I know we get the CAFRA every year, and I was assuming that this was audited along with everything else.
It's audited as part of the annual audit. The fund is very simple. You have an allocation of revenues, and you spend money against the budget that's been allocated. I mean, that's pretty much it.
I mean, this is done by an independent
Yes,
auditor.
it is. Yes.
Every year.
Mm-hmm.
And this fund is audited along with all the other monies of the city every year. And it's in here on whatever page it's on.
Right.
And you're very comfortable that it's all been audited.
I am comfortable. I also want to point out to you that in the book that you get approximately once a month, there's also a page on the tip fund. And gives you what got collected this month and cumulatively against the budget that was adopted by council. So, and then when I do my briefing, if I do my briefing today, but in your package you see the allocation again as set up by council.
What drove those questions is Lyndon appeared, our city auditor appeared at the thing, and he answered the question. He just said, I have never audited this program. He said, I've audited stormwater management, which is a different kind of audit than these financial audits. You need to make sure you know the difference between the 2 types. But he's the one that answered, I have never audited this program, which caused people to think that like stormwater, someone should. But just so you know, I heard him, I mean, I was sitting in the audience, but I know that.
Did you correct him?
Did you correct it?
What?
Did you give them the additional information?
No, because no one asked me to.
Campaign season.
No. If you watch it, I answered a lot of questions that were directed to me, but he said he did not conduct a programmatic audit, and that's correct. And what they were
Technically,
asking
you got us.
I think everybody around this table knows the difference between this kind of audit and the kinds of audits that Lyndon does. I mean, Lyndon is another layer of auditing.
You got us technically.
And to have our people out there under the impression that we haven't audited any of these figures is really concerning to me, and I don't think
With
that
good
kind
reason.
of misinformation should stand.
Mr. Mayor,
Okay.
at the risk of being too clear in the air in nature, I used the word stockpiling at the RAC meeting that I attended. And I'd like to clarify for the public's understanding the use of that term. The use of stockpiling in my life has been the accumulation of items for an intended purpose. There was never a word secret stockpiling. There was never a hidden stockpiling. And stockpiling in this case is represented on these charts on your screen, Council, by the fund balance that is shown on these. And so stockpiling is an accumulation of funds for the purpose of employing it as the TIP program designates to tourism. And that briefing was done at the request of the RAC committee, who has the oversight responsibility for the TIP. And I would ask Councilman Ern if he would elaborate on that to support the position that my attendance there and an explanation in public forum about the use of the TIP.
I mean, that part's accurate. I mean, the RAC had actually invited both the deputy city manager and the city manager to come in and.
They invited me the day of.
Right. Well, this had been discussed months ago and had been on the agenda since then. I reminded the council too that by the bylaws that this council set for the RAC, that their responsibility is to monitor the tourism growth and investment special revenue fund to ensure the expenditures are consistent with council policy. I mean, this is, and they take that seriously. And so they get briefings on a very regular basis as to the TIP fund and its intended purpose, as well as how it's doing in terms of its funding. So that's 100% accurate. I mean, the city manager was invited at the bequest of the RAC to come and do that. And Patty Phillips, poor thing, has to come in. I mean, I think they pull her in there every other week to talk about the TIP fund, but she's in there on a regular basis. But I would like to point out to the council that in terms of the robustness of this fund, we need to keep in mind that there has not been a major project that has been funded by this revenue stream since we did the convention center, and that's going on 12 years ago. Well, the Sandler was done at the same time. I mean, we've done an awful lot of really great projects with the use of this funding that's paid for, at least primarily by out-of-town visitors. And the reason that it's so large is because we had a major project that we were planning on doing that we haven't done, and we've also delayed some things. So part of what we were going to do was a 19th Street corridor that we promised the public that when we put the convention center where we were, that we were going to have a physical connection to the oceanfront. We haven't built that yet. It's funded in here. But the fact that we haven't spent it earlier means that funding is still in place.
Very good. Barbara, then John, and then we'll wind up.
I think the important thing, too, is that these projects are funded funds which can largely be attributed to tourists rather than from the general fund. And I know that was a great conversation with the arena, that the arena was not being funded by the general fund. And I think we ought to also, make that same point with these projects that are being considered now, that they're not being funded or proposed to be funded by the general fund. Because I think we really have to make certain that everybody understands, and we do take the time to answer those questions and explain the difference.
John, and then we'll wind up.
I do want to say, on the stockpiling fund, about making corrections to the record, when that came out, I knew that you had misspoke, and I said that on my face, and I explained in great detail many times to the public that there isn't a hidden surplus, there isn't a stockpile of money. It was in the CAFRA report, it's in our annual, it's in our quarterly statements. All those explanations I did provide as best I could, and even when they asked me at the library, I did talk about that, to explain that there aren't any hidden surpluses.
All right, we're going to go to city council comments.
Thanks, King.
Yes, ma'am.
I would just like to share with everyone that at the Development Authority meeting this morning, the amphitheater folks came out to speak, and they said that in the last year, The city received $1.65 million.
That's a record, isn't it?
In taxes and,
1.4 last
Yeah.
year, I think.
from the,
That was a bit record last year.
amphitheater, which is pretty exciting.
That's really good.
$1.65 million.
Really good. Johnny?
Another great Shamrock Marathon weekend, Mr. Mayor. It's good to see you down there, and just a reminder to the council and the public that they have now far exceeded the number of participants over and above even what the Rock and Roll Half Marathon was during its highest years. And I had the opportunity to announce the final mile. Folks.
You did not announce my granddaughter's winning, and I wanted you to say they won.
I was in the screen. I didn't see him coming up, but it's amazing the amount of folks, even the school age kids that are coming from out of town to participate, and a lot of these folks these little kids are raising money for a lot of really worthwhile causes.
Very
so
cool
great
stuff.
weekend.
Very cool stuff.
It was
Jim and then John.
A lot of green all weekend.
When we've looked at a lot of these mass shootings and recent school shooting today, one of the things that we noticed is, in addition to the police, other first responders are going into the situations that they wouldn't ordinarily go into. What I'd like to do, and it might not be appropriate to talk about it here, but to talk to the manager separately, I think there's some enhancements and equipment that we could purchase for specifically fire and EMS to make their lives a little bit safer.
Do you mind reaching out to the manager?
Yeah, but I just want to mention that because it will have a budgetary impact.
Yeah, great. John and then Shannon.
This on the Deferred Compensation Board met last week, I believe it was. Patty's gone. We are well on our way to the 1 July crossover to VRS. We're going to meet a couple more times to get everything, but that is moving smoothly with all the players, the people that we're divesting from, plus the people we have to transfer to. But that is, Patty's doing a superb job at that, but that is moving smoothly. And on 1 July, it should be the cutover date. And that will free up a lot of Patty's time for other stuff that she, not totally, but a lot. But I appreciate all your support and the staff support in making that happen.
Thank you, Shannon.
Couple of things. I was a speaker this morning at the Citizens Police Academy Alumni Association Awards reception. That's a long one. So, but they honored 5 volunteer groups and organizations and communities throughout Virginia Beach for giving back to the safety of our community. So that was a well-attended event. Did Mermaid Winery opening the other night, so
you get all the fun stuff. I had to be somewhere else, man. I tell you.
I only get it because you weren't available. But so Jennifer's expanding and doing well. That's over on the Shore Drive corridor in Mr. Jones' neighborhood.
Building looks great.
It does
looks
look
nice.
It looks really good.
Yeah.
It caught fire a few years ago, some time ago, so they basically had to redo everything from the beginning.
Yeah.
Then we did a ribbon cutting and a grand opening for Warriors Tap House back on General Booth.
Did they tell you I'd been there about a month or two before? They had it on the wrong date.
Oh yes, they did tell me that. And again, I only
They weren't ready to open.
They just wait here, Mr. Mayor.
I only got to do this one because you weren't
That's the
available
truth.
either.
Quality control.
But they're giving, listen to me, but they're giving a portion of all their proceeds back to wounded vets and wounded warriors and charities. And then I want to give a shout out to the police department, the planning department, housing and neighborhood preservation and traffic. We had a community meeting at Scarborough Square the other day, and city staff was out in forces to answer questions and be as diligent and helpful as they possibly could, and they did a great job, and thank you for being there.
Very good, very good. Let's go to the agenda review, council. We have speakers on what items, so we'll know. We'll have to pull, please.
Ordinance resolution.
Excuse me.
Ordinance and resolutions number 5.
Okay. Barbara Bezer speaking on number 5.
And 7A.
And 7A.
And number 4 for planning.
And number 4 for planning.
And then we have speakers signed up for planning number 6 and 7.
Okay.
Can you repeat the planning items, please?
What?
4, 6, and 7.
Say that again.
That's this one.
Gotcha.
All letters in 7? I guess, yeah.
All of them. Planning 4?
Planning 4, 6 and 7.
Okay, does everything else go on consent? Okay, everything else will be,
Well, I might have a question on this old donation. Is anybody from planning here?
Yep.
Yeah. Do you know, did the issue of the fence
5 and 7 on
between the church property and the property owner in the back of it get resolved?
We've had no updates since that point in time. We know that they were having conversations, but it was not a condition that was recommended by Planning Commission, but we're not sure.
Do you know why it wasn't recommended? According to the verbatim, both parties agreed to it. So my question is, why wasn't it made a condition?
The Planning Commission didn't feel that it was necessary at that point in time. They left it to the private owner and the church to work it out.
All right, yeah, I think I want to talk to the church.
Could you reach out to the church and see if they would agree to the fence and let him know before the meeting starts, please? Is that okay with you?
Please, yes.
Barbara?
Just the fact that two of these applications, both of which, had some neighborhood concerns, 3 and the church, of course the church was fencing and so forth, but both of them have conditions that relate to lighting. And I know that this is kind of a, boilerplate thing that we put in, but I'm finding out that it's really not as easy or as simple to enforce as maybe we thought. We just put in that lighting is to be shielded, it's no glare on the other premises, focus away from the adjoining property, all those kinds of things. And now I'm finding out that that's really not happening, and it's giving me concern that we're putting these things in as conditions. Old Donation has it as well as this Alba Taxi. I at some point would like to hear just how we enforce this, or if we enforce it, and if we say, it's really not that important, why are we thinking that we're solving that issue if we're not? So I just wanted to make that with both of these because I've got concerns.
All right.
Can, Ms. Henley, they've added that shielding in there, correct?
Well, it's in on both of these.
Right. Those are lessons learned from the scar tissue that you and I and staff and everybody's learning on the business of LEDs. And the installation package will be complete, and we'll be running the lumens testing, and we'll be doing the same level of scrutiny that we've done on the church in question that we're working through, and the lessons learned that we have learned from there. So if you're asking me, will we enforce those? And I will tell you, yes, we are. We will.
Well, for example, this one with the taxi, it says that that there won't be any lighting fixtures higher than 14 feet, which seems to be, I think, what should be right. But I just, it bothers me when we're saying that there's not going to be any glare on the adjoining properties, and then there might be. And anyway, we'll continue to talk about it. But I know it's been a standard condition on applications for a number of years, and I didn't know it was that hard to enforce.
That would be 2 of us, Ms. Henley.
Okay, everything's on consent except for the items that I've brought to your all's attention.
I'll just mention, just so everybody knows, this item 6, you should have a letter that maybe you haven't had a chance to look at in the blue package, which is now
The back cage, right?
From some folks in the neighborhood who say they were supported, but they aren't now, and I didn't get this until yesterday, and I tried to get in touch with the applicant today, and I wasn't able to because he was at work, I'm sure. And then I think we've got another letter that I've just been given that we just received this afternoon. I'll pass this out to you.
This is for the batting cage in the yard.
Every now and then we think we've got an easy one, and it turns out to be not.
Okay, we'll pass those out.
All right, I will pass this out.
The chair will entertain a motion to recess into a closed session pursuant to the exemptions from open meetings allowed by section 2.2-3711A Code of Virginia as amended for the following purposes: legal matters, consultation with legal counsel, and briefings by staff members or consultants pertaining to actual or probable litigation where such consultation or briefing is in opening would adversely affect the negotiating or the litigating posture of the public body, and consultation with legal counsel employed or retained by a public body regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel pursuant to section 2.2-3711A7, possible opioid litigation. Personnel matters, discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific public officers, appointees, or employees of any public body pursuant to section 2.2-3711A1, council appointments, council boards, commissions, committees, authorities, agencies, and appointees, and appointee evaluations. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Okay, good. Call the roll, please.
Ms. Tinley?
Aye.
Mr. Dyer?
Aye.
Mr. Moss?
Aye.
Mr. Davenport?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott, absent. Ms. Kane?
Aye.
Mr. Ern?
Aye.
Mr. Wood?
Aye.
Ms. Wilson?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Jones?
Aye.
Mayor Sessions? 10.
Aye.